Hello, everybody. I don't know if you heard me say we're going live, but that's like one of those moments behind the scenes, like 3, 2, 1, and you can hear them say 3, 2, 1. So hope everybody's having a fantastic day. We're on day 4 of the Blue Talks Flip Your Script event, and brought to you by Blue Talks, which you can find out more about. I remember to do this right from the start this time, at least. You can find out more about Blue Talks at bluetalks.com. And also, so we don't forget, if you're watching this right now, make sure to share it, like it, comment. If you comment, you get your name in the draw for 150 or 12 books so far that we're drawing. So it's worth a while to comment, but share and show that you care. I guess would be the best way.
And also brought to you by Flip Your Script Coaching, the whole concept of changing a thought to change your life, because that's the most amazing, exciting piece, isn't it? Like, we change one thought, changes our perspective, and our entire reality, the way we see the world, changes right before our eyes. So super exciting stuff. And we have some amazing, I would go back and watch replays if you weren't able to join us for the entire week. And today's going to be amazing as well. Super excited. Got a brief hello from our first guest, so I'm excited to bring her on. I'll let you do the intro.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to bring her on as well. I mean, when you prepare these things, it takes so long until you actually, like, once you're preparing them and you're getting everything ready, the wait in between is like, it's like, I want this to start right away. So I'm excited when it finally gets here. And so, yeah, I'm super stoked to bring on some magical and amazing guests today. One thing I will say, since I did start off the rest, is when I mentioned about book giveaways, these are 2 of the ones that will be given away. So draw for 5 of this book, 3 of this book. We're also going to give away 3 copies of Elise's book. The name Elise is
I already am! Exclamation point, because it's so important to recognize that you already are right now. Everything that you think you need to grow your business to be, that you need to be pain-free to be, that you need to have the perfect relationship to be, or have the wealth to be, or have the perfect family to be. You already are right now. Everything that you need to be.
And I feel like the last
exclamation point.
I feel like the last book name, I've been trying to memorize this. I think it's Midlife Mojo by Frankie Picasso, one of my students who was great and gracious enough. And she's also a Blue Talks community member. I believe, without looking, I think she's going to be speaking at Harvard in the spring with us. And so Frankie offered that up on her own. So that was super cool of her to do. So that's kind of all the housekeeping. So let's get right on to the guests and the amazing conversation that I think will follow. So I'm going to bring her up on the screen like we typically do. And Dr. Elizabeth Hughes, I believe I can say Dr. Elizabeth Hughes, correct?
Yeah, you can say that, but call me Elizabeth.
Okay.
We'll call you Elizabeth.
Will do. And I know you guys got a chance just to meet briefly behind or backstage, if you will. But Elise meet Elizabeth. Elizabeth meet Elise, my co-host.
Nice to meet you officially.
This is going to be a great conversation because this is what I do.
Yes, this is what I do too. We're just doing it together right now.
Right.
Absolutely. And Elizabeth, where we usually like to start, because I think it sets the tone for everything. I've always said, rather than me read somebody else's bio from the screen, I always think it's better just to get them to introduce themselves a little bit. So are you able to tell us just a little bit about yourself? And then no worries about how deep you go, because we'll dive in deeper anyway.
Okay, perfect. So I am a regular old board certified physician, and I spent I want to say sort of 15 years practicing completely conventionally, doing everything you would normally. And I really didn't think that there was anything more to health than what I'd learned in medical school and what was being written in journals. And then I had a patient who had an unexpected, I don't use the word spontaneous because it didn't happen instantly, but an unexpected cure of a supposedly incurable disease based on a change in belief. She had believed that she was so old that this condition would never heal. And when I don't know what happened during that patient interaction, like, she's in my room, I've just met her, she's just told me, and something in me said, can I swear? I mean, I said to her, and I usually don't swear, it's definitely not in front of patients. I'm like, that's bullshit. Doesn't matter how old you are, that you can get better. And she sort of went, what? Nobody said this to her, and she'd been getting meticulous, excellent medical care consistently for 6 months prior to seeing me, and this condition was only getting worse. I mean, only getting much, much worse. 3 weeks later, problem's gone. And I didn't treat her with anything. That's the really important thing. It's not
But like, you really did.
I really did. But it's not like I said, oh, you're going to get better, and then prescribed a medicine. I'm a dermatologist, and I literally prescribed Vaseline and gauze wraps, like something you can get in your local drugstore. And she came back, and the problem was completely gone 3 weeks later. And so normally, doctors are so busy that incidents like this, you're just like, okay, problem solved, check, move on, go to the next thing. But this made me stop and think. It was like, what just happened here? Why didn't I never get taught about this? Why am I not using this all the time? And why, basically, how could medicine change if everyone knew this? That's really my thing. Like, how would everyone's health universally change if they knew the power of what they think?
And how would the industry who's prescribing change? I mean, there's a whole...
Right. There's an enormous spiral, and this, maybe we're going to go deep early. There's this enormous...
We're going there, girl. We're going there.
Right. Well, there is this enormous spiral, all based on the fundamental idea that I am sick, that sickness is my base state. And most of us don't really question that belief. They believe that they are sick and destined to become ill at some time. And the entire medical profession is about that. The entire way I was trained was all about parsing out illness and identifying illness really well and trying to make illness a little bit better, but really changing that whole base principle of people get sick, and people are supposed to get sick. Like, that's what we believe. And that is insane. And it causes us to, well, we can go there, but
we're going to go
more
there.
Medication, more and more money, more and more desperation, happy with less and less actual improvement. Mm-hmm. People make themselves satisfied. I feel a little better today. My shoulder doesn't hurt so much. Like, no, your shoulder should not hurt at all.
Like, how many times have you heard I've learned to live with it?
Yes, I've learned to live with it. Like, no.
Why? Like, why would you want to learn to live with something that you wouldn't even prescribe yourself, right? But I do want to say one thing, Elizabeth, because this is huge, and I usually am the one to say it. I love how you said the medical field, because it's medical care as opposed to health care. And I'm a huge advocate for that, because healthcare is really inspiring and assisting an individual and recognizing that, first of all, we have the power within us, right, to heal instantly, actually. I mean, we can heal in moments. And I know when I start to feel a certain way, if I check in and I flip my script on that, it goes away. I mean, literally, I can feel in my body everything shift and change. Mm-hmm. And I had an autoimmune disease, Guillain-Barré syndrome or Guillain-Barré.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but that's...
Oh, yeah. That's big. Like, you're paralyzed.
I was paralyzed at 18.
Right.
Yeah, totally. And it's not just all at once. It's not like you get in an accident and something happens with your spine and you wake up and you can't. It's really scary because you could feel your feet and then you can't. You can move your hands and then you can't. Like, it's like you don't know how you're going to wake up in the morning, or you don't know what that next hour is going to bring. So you're witness to it, because I'm in my right mind, or in a mind that doesn't know what's happening. But so it's very scary. but that's what changed everything for me. And it was a physical, personal experience, but I was told that it could take a few years before I might walk again. And I had this aha, or this epiphany moment where I was like, that's their perspective. Like, that's what they think and what they believe, and in turn their reality. I don't know how I knew this at the time. And I said, well, I'm going to create my own reality. I'm going to do an experiment. And I believe in 3 months, I'm going to walk out of here. It's not going to hit my respiratory system, which a lot of times it does. And I'm not going to need physical therapy, which a lot of times people need. I'm not going to need a wheelchair or a walker or a cane. And I walked out in 3 months, and I was like, wow, if I can do this, this is like something that people can do. And so it took me a while to get where I am now, but I'm walking, living, breathing, joyful proof that it's real.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe can I turn the tables a little bit here?
Please do.
Can I ask the question?
Yes.
So for you, what was the sort of little win that you got that kept you going? And that's something I find that people, when they're starting into this work, they might have been someone who's had multiple sclerosis for a decade, and they've gotten to the point where they can't walk anymore. And what they really want is to get rid of their wheelchair, and they'd really like to have it tomorrow, please. But it's seeing those little wins. So for what little win at the very beginning did you see, feel, sense that kept you going?
When I was actually in this experience,
or
after, because I went through a lot of process after that. I mean,
I'm sure, but like
that it takes. But so in that moment, so it was kind of like, it was almost like, you know how we have a fear and we believe in a fear. I just had this faith, and I'm not a religious faith, like a universal spiritual sort of like connecting to source faith.
Yeah.
And I just went with it. I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to see. And I wasn't holding myself accountable for the result. See, I didn't have an expectation really. It was kind of like, if I tell myself it's an experiment, we can see how it goes. And I did go through plasmapheresis. And I mean, I went through the medical process. But as it was, and then I was told in stages, you know, it's not progressing, right? So I was getting these, you know, little keys and confirmations from the medical field, from the doctors and the nurses, that I had plateaued. That's what they call it, right? So I was gradually going, and as I started to shift my perspective and my belief, it started to sort of slow down and plateau, and it didn't affect my respiratory system. And when I knew that it didn't go there, then I knew I was already had flipped it.
Right,
so I
right.
think that was it. When it didn't hit my respiratory system, and I was told that it wouldn't, and I was told that it wouldn't. And that's another belief. Maybe if I was told that it would have shifted everything, right? Yeah. So I got confirmation on the belief that I held. And that was really important. And that was a gift from the doctors and the nurses, that they were confirming for me my ability at that point, that I was starting to heal and it was going to reverse itself. So I think that was the big win. Also knowing and getting that confirmation, like you confirmed for your patient. Bullshit. You know, who told you that, you know, or now it's not going to affect your respiratory system. So it was like that big win for me.
Yeah. Yeah. But I love
all uphill from there, or downhill, or whatever you
Right. Well, both at the same time.
So it's so important for people in your industry, your you know, doctors and nurses, to really pay attention to what they're saying and how they're sharing what they're sharing with their patients, because that's the prescription.
Right. Exactly. I want to make 2 points. First, I'll just comment that for you, that first big win was that sense of faith. And so for anyone watching this, that sense of faith that you get, don't discount it. That's real. That's when, from a medical standpoint, that feeling of faith or that feeling of trust, that is your parasympathetic nervous system, your repair and restore responses in your body turning on. And a lot of people will have that feeling and feel like it's fake or unimportant, or this is, you know, that's not what needs to happen. And that's everything that needs to happen. And you have to stick with that feeling, that sense of faith, grounded trust in yourself. And you can
You know, and that,
right. But
it's faith not in a religious standpoint, because I think that people think faith, and if you're against the organizer or the package of spirituality called religion, people shy away from it. I don't care what you call it. It's a knowing. It was a knowing.
It's a knowing, right? It's a deep, deep knowing. I sometimes use the word trust, but people will shy away from that. I can't trust my body. Look, I can't walk. It's
that's a whole story that happened after.
Yeah.
For me, I couldn't trust my body when I felt a pain or an ache. Like that's a whole other conversation that we'll have that we won't bring up. But there's a lot of, you know, side effects to the process.
Whatever you want to call it. It's a deep knowing and a sort of embodied knowing. And that's important. That moment that you feel, that's it. But on to the way that doctors and nurses talk, everybody's heard of the placebo effect, but almost no people have heard of the nocebo effect, which is the opposite of the placebo effect. And I never heard that word until 5 years ago. And then, oh my gosh, when I heard the word, I was like, how many people have I jinxed? And I will say that it's almost because medicine loves statistics and averages. And if the average person gets average results, and you give a person the idea that average is the best that can happen, well, everyone gets average results. And it's not nocebo effect in the sense that you're cursing necessarily. You're not actually trying to make a person ill, or not. Of course, you're not trying to, but it's not recognizing the incredible potential that you actually have when you look at what the average results are. And of course, the average results are the result of an imperfect system. And so of course, they're very average and mediocre and not really satisfying. So be aware of the nocebo effect, any doctors, nurses out there, and patients too.
Right. And even outside of the medical, even outside of having a disease that's been diagnosed, in your own home, in your own relationship, in your own mind, with your own children, like all of these words and thoughts matter. They carry a vibration. And I love how you emphasized that the belief and the trust and the knowing actually activates within us this frequency of I call it frequency, but this healing frequency, right? The cells start going, they have a whole different makeup, right? The cells start shifting and changing. Right. And this is something that I use as an example, and I don't know so much about like the physical body, like from a medical standpoint, because I'm more on the energy emotional side. But, if you change the environment in which your plants are thriving, right? Like you don't give them enough sunlight, or you don't give them enough water, or you stop fertilizing them, then the plants are not going to thrive anymore. Well, I believe the same holds true with disease that has already physically manifested in the body. If the cancer's living in an environment within your body, and it's an environment that's perfect and they're thriving, as soon as you change that environment, be it a thought, it can't thrive anymore, right? You're changing the conditions in which it's thriving. That makes sense.
It makes absolute perfect sense, and it goes into a lot of my approach to working with things like cancer and
perfect.
So
we'd love to learn more. I would anyway.
So I'm going to point out one thing to start with. When you mentioned the cancer environment, that cancer cells in a body are thinking about the environment, most people, the first and second and third thing they're going to think about is food. Doesn't work. like it doesn't work. And that's going to make a lot of people really angry, because the biochemical machinery, I don't like to think about the body as a machine, but I'll use the term machinery. The biochemical processes are all controlled by how we think and what we feel. And so you can eat the best, most wholesome, organic food, doing everything perfect, following a diet to the letter. And if the biochemical processes in your body are still working in that disease-based state, the food's making no difference. None at all. And so, what I love is the characteristics of people who have had extraordinary recoveries from cancer. And there's like books about this. And it's like, there's 10 of them, and one of them's food. like one. But that's where everybody goes, and I'm going to put all my time, energy, money, et cetera, all my hope on eating the right thing or finding.
And hope is still a little wishy-washy.
Yes, hope. Yeah. Hope means that there is a possibility of something other than the positive outcome.
Like maybe if I get lucky enough, right? And that's so far removed from this belief or this trust that we talk about. I love that we're having this conversation. I think you have the medical background to back it up, because I have conversations and I don't have the background that you have. So I'd love to continue a conversation beyond here, because
this is
I was like thinking it, and I'm like, I knew it. I didn't know why, but I just knew it. So
right.
It's really exciting.
Right. But so back to the environment of the cell of the body, or the cells that have cancer, there's lots in our environment. Like, we don't mostly visual. Are you looking around and liking what you see? It's huge to make sure that your physical environment is something that you like to hear, touch, smell, and see. Those are some silly things. Those are little indications of your body just likes it. It takes in that, I like that. And that's that same enjoyment feeling, that kinesthetic feeling that you like. Relationships are enormous. Relationships are probably the best thing you can do for yourself. It is better to have good relationships than it is to quit smoking or get a flu shot or eat well. I mean, there's actually data on this that shows that relationships are more
Or exercise every day.
So I'm the world's weirdest health coach. I am never going to tell you to diet or exercise.
Me either. And I'm like, and if you want to eat that box of cookies, the only thing that I'm going to tell you is you have to enjoy every bite. Right. As soon as you decide to take a bite and you feel stressed or guilty about it, put the cookie down. But eat the whole box if you want to. Yeah. As long as you enjoy every bite, eat it all, because your body's going to enjoy, because we digest with our thoughts first.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
They're like, eat a whole box of cookies, because I have a weight loss program where I help people tap into this freedom of what's really weighting you down. They're like, you're telling me to eat a box of cookies if I want to? I'm like, yes, it's not the cookies. It's how you feel when you're eating the cookie.
Right. Like, what prompted you to pick them up in the first place? Right.
You must have wanted them on some level, and now you're feeling guilty.
Yeah. So that's not good.
Elizabeth, I'm gonna flip the switch a little bit here. Not the script, but the switch. Or I guess it'd be the script as well. But and by the way, I'll let people know too, because I never think to mention this, but if you see me typing and all that stuff, people might be wondering, is he not paying attention? But people don't have a clue sometimes what goes on behind the scenes here. At least gets to see it. But we had one of our guests that had to switch up their times. So Elise and I are going to be improv a little bit from now between two guests. But that's when you see me doing that, I'm totally taking it all in and just answering that person. But Elizabeth, because I was taking this all in, I want to ask your thoughts on two things, because I know, where you're saying about the food side and the exercise side and stuff like that. And then when I say anything, anybody that knows me knows I come from it with love, but I always want to get an outside perspective on it. But two things that popped into my head. One, we used to have a guy that was in our mastermind group. I'll give him a shout out. His name is Richard Davison. And Richard is a 77-year-old alkalarian. And Richard basically took on this alkalarian lifestyle when he was 50. And he's 77 now, and he goes hiking. He can do cartwheel. He can do a handspring. And I don't think, I can barely do it now.
Handspring.
and his wife, same thing. And they're both like approaching 80. And the reason I asked, or a reason I bring him up, is because what he said is that cancer cannot survive in an alkaline body. It has no ability to. So my question on the food side is, I know you said it's not about food, and I know at least you said
it's not only about food. There's a big difference between saying food doesn't matter, because food, obviously what you're feeding, the environment, what you're feeding your body or your vehicle matters, but it's not the only thing, right? Is that what you meant? Yeah. It's not that it doesn't matter.
Well, right. So it's not the only thing. Yeah. So yes, I love this because I love to read people's stories of how, their self-recovery stories and stuff like that. And I've read so many of these. And when you read them and you realize that people will have that same aha moment that you described, Elise, that is that moment when you say, I'm going to have a different outcome. I can feel it, and I'm going to find what's right for me. And you have to have that moment first before you do something like taking on a specific diet, taking on a specific lifestyle. There's a very famous doctor, Dr. Terry Walls, who did the same thing for her MS, or multiple sclerosis. She was a professor at the University of Iowa and ended up confined to a wheelchair very, very rapidly. And she said, I'm going to find something different. And then she has a whole diet, and she calls it the Walls Protocol. But when I really, you read into the book on the emotional front for the content of what a person's real thought process is that they haven't been able to articulate, you realize every one of them, every single one has said, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to find something different. And so I've worked with clients who have followed Dr. Wall's protocol to the level and gotten sicker and sicker and sicker because they're all focused on that physical action, that if I do this action, I will feel better. And you got to start with feeling better.
So doing from a place of lack is actually going to take you in the other direction, right? Like if we make a decision and we're doing it because we don't like where we're at, right? Or doing it from a place of lack.
Or I hope it'll work.
In hopes of, you're still running on the same operating system. Right. I call it the operating system. Like, how are you running? What is it running on?
So I totally get it. Corey, to your point, that yes, absolutely. You can live an alkaline lifestyle and stuff like that. But if you don't make that, flip the switch in your head first, you won't find it. And at the same time, he's got this alkaline lifestyle, and you can take a group of people who are, let's say, strict vegetarians somewhere sitting on a mountain in freezing cold and, Nepal, and they have the same result with a different set of protocols, and it's because it's all up here first.
So I guess the $1 million question then, when I hear that, is if now, because you said like if you take different people in different circumstances, what if you were now to take somebody like you said about the switch happens? So what if you were to take somebody where the switch happens and then they're still eating what we consider as a society crappy, and then you take somebody where the switches happen and they're eating alkalarian? Will the food make a big difference then? Like, let's say both have made that switch. They both say something's got to change. What I'm wondering is,
person.
So
is that is that a fair question? It's like if you flip the switch and somebody's eating vegetables and a healthy, what we consider a whole healthy diet, and the other person's still eating French fries and hamburgers and chicken and stuff like that.
So yes, they may not see the same physical parameters that they might otherwise, but they will get some of their energy. There will be something that happens that is different from whether they were. So let me give an exact example of a person that I know who got a Fitbit, decided that she was going to test her resting heart rate, found her average resting heart rate for a period of time, and decided she was going to walk. I was like, I'm just going to see if this walking works, and her resting heart rate dropped, over a month of consistently getting some exercise. Her resting heart rate dropped to about 10 points. And then she said, damn it, I have smoked for way too long. Let's try a non-smoking experiment. Stopped walking. And stopped walking, doing any exercise, but stopped smoking, and her heart rate dropped another 25 points. So for her, people would say, well, if I walk, shouldn't that be equal to not smoking or something like that? But for her, the real point was, I was surprised at how much her heart rate dropped. But it was this point where she said, this is no longer healthy for me, and flipped it. And to your point, Corey, is most of the time, once you actually do make the switch and you really get in touch with what your body wants, you're not going to keep eating the junk. You're just not. Your body doesn't actually want that. And when I did it, I was like, Elizabeth, stop eating meat. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Okay. I'll do that. Stop drinking alcohol. Yeah, you're right. I don't feel well when I do that. And it just will happen out of the blue, and you just don't want it anymore.
Yeah, no, and that makes complete sense, because my how I was looking at it when I asked that is that the alkalarian diet is still, I mean, he doesn't call it a diet. I just should add that because this is his lifestyle since forever.
Right, exactly.
And what he does, just as a side note, it's kind of funny. Once a year on his birthday, he has steak and chocolate cake because they're not on the Alkalarian lifestyle.
Right, exactly.
He's from the military, so he's got that background of being really, disciplined. But the reason I asked that is because the one thing I liked about it versus other ones I've seen is the other ones seemed like diets to me. You can do this for a while, then you'll get healthier, then you can stop. Where with Alkalarian, it's all stuff you buy in the grocery store. There's no like eat a whole bunch of fat versus this, or eat a bunch of protein versus this. It's just eat sensible. Right. The only key thing is they want you to limit acid, like citrus foods, like oranges and stuff like that are very acidy.
Yeah.
So they basically, it's built more on the idea of you should have 20% acid foods and then 80% alkaline. Right. So it just seemed to be like a very practical way.
It reminds me of Edgar Cayce. Are you all familiar with Edgar Cayce and his remedies?
Yeah,
it's 80-20. I mean, that's how he does his diet. It's the 80-20 diet.
Right. So and this is just sort of food choices. It's different, like a food pyramid,
but it's about being excited about it. So when I was teaching this keto, because keto was really big for a while, and I was just kind of helping people, it was the art of well-being, but art of, eating in a way that you want to eat it. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. Mm-hmm. And instead of looking at it as being deprived, right? Because that's also putting yourself in a state of, right?
Yeah.
Right? But I would encourage people to look at what can you eat when you choose this lifestyle, and then take the things that you can eat and start being creative with them. So look at what you can have and see if that works for you.
Don't look at the no list.
Right. Right. Look at what you can have, because it's all about feelings for me. Like whatever I can use as a tool to help people recognize it's really how you feel about your choices that is making the impact. And also it's about, okay, so you're making the choices of what you can have and choosing to feel good as opposed to depriving yourself from something that you can't have in hopes that you'll feel better, but making the choice that how you feel is more important than anything else. Right. And then go in that direction from there, whether it's the food you eat or the exercise or stop smoking or whatever it is. Right. But choose it from that place.
Right. And we kind of devolved into a diet thing right here for a second.
But it's in the mind, though. It's how we're choosing to eat. And why are we? Because I love myself and it's awesome and I'm excited to feel better.
But things like relationships and creativity and having, what was I saying? Having a sense of purpose, giving back. I mean, those are the things that are going to have the major impact. So,
I agree.
You can have all these diet things, but there's something else. And what I love to help with people is when they say, well, there's something in me that needs to come out. Well, that's the thing that's going to make you better. Like my college friend who had brain tumor and very linear. I remember his dad, very linear. You're going to be an engineer. And he's like, I've always wanted to play drums. So horrible brain cancer, wasn't going to survive. Started learning to play drums. He still plays, in a dive bar every Saturday night. Well, not now, but with COVID. But yeah, so he's alive and he's playing drums and it doesn't matter.
That's why I wrote this, exactly what you're saying, finding your why, because I said, for at least this will be like a dead record for me saying this, but the difference for me, Elizabeth, when I found my calling and my purpose was night and day. So I went from a person that was, and whether I was eating well or not at the time was irrelevant because I wasn't happy. I had no quality. So my body maybe even looked healthier, but I didn't feel as good. And or if I'd have to get 10 hours or 9 hours sleep to feel good. Whereas now, because I have 2 kids, I don't get 10 hours sleep and I still wake up without coffee like this every day. So I totally get what you're saying about having a sense of purpose. And I will say in the book, what I called it was vitamin P. So I said, vitamin P is the only vitamin you can't buy in the store, but it's the most important vitamin you'll ever take.
I love that. I never heard that before, Corey. That's the first.
Oh yeah. And I say it's vitamin P to me is passion and purpose. Both of those. If you can take that every day, you're going to be ahead of the people that haven't found that and are eating every single great thing in the world and taking all the other vitamins in the world.
Exactly. And there's, health is incredibly individualized. Like how you are going to get better is as individual as your fingerprint. So but medicine, health, diet advice, supplements, all of them all work on sort of, the average person. In medicine, we talk about the 70 kilogram man. Like there's one, he's picture this 70 kilogram block. And that's not how true health happens. So when we rely on medicine that first off is approaching us as if sickness is our normal state, but then is only giving us an average idea of what can happen and average treatments, and not allowing for these things like finding your purpose, like you, Corey, your purpose, which is different than mine. But that's the thing that really, really makes us healthy.
I adore you. I just have to say, I adore a lot of people, but I adore you in such a way because you're so clear in explaining it. You're coming from a background where a lot of people feel you're edifying certain things that people talk about in a way because you're coming from that medical field, right? You're coming from the science side of things, right, with an understanding of what truly lies at the root of being what I call a well-being, not well-being, but a well-being.
I like that.
Like a true it's the art of well-being, right? And when we become a well-being, it's whole, right? And it starts from how we recognize our own value. That, I focus a lot on individual and family values. From an individual standpoint, when somebody truly recognizes their value and recognizes that what they say and how they think actually make an impact, not only for them, but for the entire world.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't think you matter, right, then it doesn't matter what you say or how you think or how you treat yourself, because you don't really think it matters and it doesn't make an impact. But if you get somebody to recognize their value and the impact that they could make just by saying, I appreciate you. I appreciate me. I could feel the difference in myself to just say it to someone and know that when I say it, I'm going to touch them in a way that matters to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a lot of value. Do you find that when clients come to you, there's maybe a self-worth or a value thing at the root of what's going, a victim-y kind of, I don't like to use the word victim, but a victim sort of archetype?
Yes, absolutely. And because of that, people will not put the energy, devotion, dedication, and money toward their own health that they would do for other people. Like, if your child was sick, you would walk through fire for your child, but for yourself, no, I can live with this.
Because it doesn't matter, right? We're somewhere in the underbelly of it all, like literally, right? In the gut. They have a feeling like, I don't deserve it. I'm unworthy. It doesn't really matter. What's the point? And that vibration itself is... Which
then when you're surrounded with a world that says sickness is your norm, you say, well, of course, that's all I deserve.
Right. Yeah. What else? That's what I expected. And
that's what I expected.
And we get what we expect, to be honest.
Right.
So how do you work one-on-one with individuals? Do you have groups? Do you have programs that people can be a part of?
Yes.
All that.
Yeah. So I do not have a group starting today, in November of 2020, right. But, soon I will have another group starting up again, but I do work with individuals one-on-one and, really, really go into making sure that idea of I am healthy is yours. And then you find the ways to make it work for you.
It's interesting because I'm hearing I am sick, I am this. And you hear a lot of the affirmation stuff. And what about I feel sick? Because you're not really sick. I'm not happy either. I feel happy. I'm even more than my happiness or more than my sadness, right? Or more than my dis-ease or whatever. I feel. So even if somebody changed the way that they said it,
I feel sick.
I feel sick.
Yeah, I feel sick. I'm experiencing illness. Instead of saying I am diabetic, for instance, I am diagnosed with diabetes, or I have a diagnosis.
Right, because it takes you out of it.
This identity, right? You take on this identity, and part of the right up front. Part of the frightening thing about working with me is you got to get rid of that identity.
Me too. I'm like, I get really clear, girl.
So let me, as we start to wind down.
One thing, Corey, because we hear a lot, and we spoke yesterday with, I think it was Erica or a couple of our guests throughout the week, and we talk about I am affirmations, right? So we're really, focused on I am bold, I am amazing, I am awesome, right? So we can become that. So so the opposite hold, like the flip side also holds true, that if you say I am sick, I'm not healthy, I'm, whatever I have something, or I am this, in the other way, you're also sort of like planting that seed of being that, right? So we need to think of it both ways. If you're focused on being bold and amazing and I am this, so be careful of what I am on the other side of it, because you can become that too.
Am is an equal sign. You're like, do you want this? I equal sick. You do want that? No.
Right. I feel, right? I've been diagnosed with, I love that.
Yeah.
So, Elizabeth, there's a couple of comments I wanted to share with you. But one of the things I was going to say before I share some comments, and then we start to wind down, I know our next guest is going to be coming up soon, and I know she's backstage. But we got a little bit of a buffer because of the other person that I said mixed it up, so we're had to switch up. But having said that, one of the things I wanted to kind of, and of course, I mean, myself at least, I'm not a doctor, so anything I say is not really a medical advice in any respect. But one of the things to sort of validate what you're saying, but then also share kind of a unique experience on top of that, is just today I was in seeing an acupuncturist that she's a spunky 84-year-old acupuncturist who's just like, and it's so funny because the way she talks to people, and everybody loves her because of it. But like the other day, my girlfriend was in, and at the end of the session, she goes, "Nice to know you. See ya." Like, just like I'll never see you again. But she's coming back. My girlfriend's going back the next Monday. It's just the way she talks. And people will say, I'm sick and blah, blah. And she goes, "That's because you talk like that." She'll hit you in the top of the head. Like,
I, as a doctor, am not allowed to do that. And no, but I mean, this is actually really, really an important point. Doctors have these standards of professional behavior, and if you break those norms, you can get sued, lose your license, lose your profession, lose your career. And as a doctor, that hangs over everyone's head all the time. So that if what you really needed to hear is you're thinking wrong, you stop it. But if I say that, I'm going to get an angry person who sues me. So there's a virtual gag order on doctors about what we can say. And this lack of truth saying, because doctors know, we feel when something's wrong, like, you are clearly in an emotionally abusive relationship with that other person. And if you got rid of that would change your life, and your blood pressure would drop, and you wouldn't have heartburn or anything anymore. So that truth saying is gagged in doctors. And
so it just goes to show that the whole system is is medical than health. So people are like, and oh, I have to do this for my health care. Just be clear, it's medical care. Everybody who knows me, my clients are so tired of me saying it, but it's true. Like, at least understand where you're choosing to spend your valuable time, energy, and well-being, right? Like, because if somebody knows something, and this entire industry is telling these people that we respect, right, and are looking for answers from, that they can't give us the answers that will really help us become these well-beings, well, let's question that to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes,
I'll just add in about the acupuncture is what I want to share there as far as...
Oh, right, Corey, go ahead. Oh, right, you're there. Okay, go ahead.
So the scenario with me is that all the things you're talking about, I practice. I have a lot of relationships in my life, strong relationships. I found my why. Most people say, how do you have so much energy all the time, especially getting lack sleep? And I feel like $1 million. However, through medical tests throughout the years, my liver enzyme has always been slightly elevated, like minuscule amount. Like, I mean, they say 50 is normal or whatever, 1500 is like hepatitis. Well, I'm at like 55. Like, it's always just barely. And then it goes back to normal. And so I've had like doctors over 20 years have just given up on it. They're just like, well, it's just elevated. So I go into this Chinese doctor, that I was talking about. And within 2 minutes, she said, and she, by the way, I didn't tell her I had anything going on with my liver. She just asked me a couple of questions because she said, does this hurt? And she went back to my ears. And I said, yeah, it does. That's weird. And does this hurt here? And she, pushed back here. And she goes, oh, you got a fatty liver. She goes, here's what we're going to do to heal that. And she said, you come see me 4 times, it'll be gone. And I said, so will I have to keep doing all these things you're telling me for the rest of my life? She goes, no, it's healed. Why would you keep doing them? But my point is, my girlfriend went because she was having issues when she was pregnant, and they said that it was gallbladder and they'd have to do all this stuff. And she went to her 3 times and her gallbladder was perfect. And the doctor said we couldn't even see what was going, like what they saw before, they couldn't even see anymore. And she went the second time with the second baby, same thing. So, to your point, I don't even know there's anything going on because I don't feel it. Maybe because I have all those other things you talked about in place. But she said it'll still catch up to you when you get older unless you get this fixed. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's interesting how she was just like, it'll be gone in 4 sessions. And I watched her do that with multiple people.
Right.
And she already planted the seed.
Right. Well, so.
Oh, Shelley didn't believe her at all.
Right. So your regular doctor, let me take a second. There is a lot of value and benefit to the supposedly, alternative medical community. Acupuncture, Chinese medicine, Ayurveda have been keeping people healthy for thousands of years. I mean, let's be real honest. And they predated any conventional Western medicine. So I'm a big fan of Ayurveda. That's just sort of my tradition, my yogic tradition outside of medicine. But so there is a different base mindset that those true practitioners come with, is the body can heal. That, and I think that that's the mindset of the practitioner. And this little bit of a warning, because I know a lot of naturopaths, I know a lot of people who are acupuncturists, but they're still coming at from that Western mindset of you're sick as your baseline and we can make you a little better. And so you can take the right tool and apply it with the wrong or with a
delivery,
with a misguided intention. So your acupuncturist, your brilliant acupuncturist says, I can make that go away. Do. If I, the regular doctor, can look at you and say, your psoriasis can go, it's going to take 3 months. And if it doesn't, I get sued. So I'm safer to just say, yeah, you're going to have to live with it. And it's not, but no, we can't, it is 100% possible to have a mindset, emotional reset that gets rid of your rash. And I know because I had lifelong eczema up until I was about 26, and it happened like that. And, like overnight.
Skin is amazing. We were just having this conversation with Eternal Beauty Gold or Eternal Gold Beauty with Erica and Jewel Arnaz. They have this company and they put frequency into their skincare.
Right.
But the reality of it is that the skincare is just this tangible product, but it's the energy, it's the I am, it's the how we feel, because skin is like such a representation. I mean, oh my God, right. What it represents on an emotional level. Like when I see skin issues, I'm like, I already have the download. I don't know the details, but I know the archetype and I know where their blocks are. And I find, I want to ask you this: do you find when you work with a client, as soon as you tell them that we've got this, that everything changes for them? Like when they know that you're on their side and you give them that confirmation and affirmation that, you know what, we've got this.
Yeah,
we're gonna get this. This is all good. Like
it's all shift. It's all, yes, there is a solution and it's within you. And the only work is to just clear out the trash until you find the gold.
Do you see the shift? Can you, like, I physically can see my clients like energetically shift. I'm like, you need to go look in the mirror at yourself right now. Like, you totally changed.
Right. You just look like you lost 10 years.
Yes. I love it. So So go ahead, Corey, you're going to ask.
Even though we'll have to call it a to be continued because it's such a brilliant conversation, but I also know our next guest, she has people tuning in from Africa and stuff, so I want to make sure, just from a time zone perspective, we bring her right up. But Elizabeth, and I know Elise asked this, but where can we learn more, connect with you, all those kind of good things? And like, we'll call it a to be continued because obviously it's an exciting conversation.
Yeah. So my name is my website, Elizabeth Hughes MD. It's just written right there, Elizabeth Hughes MD, all squished together.com. That's me.
That's awesome. And Elizabeth, you might want to watch the comments because there have been some comments that people have made. Some of my personal Facebook page you can go check. Some inside the Flip Your Script group. And if you want to watch for that. And then Elise and I are going to get a break where we were going to have a guest before. So maybe we'll tackle some of those questions and you can still comment in the comments if you want to.
Oh, yeah. Definitely.
And Elizabeth, I would love to invite you on one of the Flip Your Script Fridays to continue this conversation, because I think it's so important that people recognize that how they feel and how they think really is at the root of being a happy being and a healthy.
All right. Yes, I'd love to. Thank you.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elizabeth.
Thanks
it was
so much.
Thank you so much. And so I'm going to bring our next guest right on so we dive.
Lovely.
Hello.
Hello, Rehana. And I never asked you this before. So how do we pronounce your full name? Because every person, first time I'm talking to them live. So,
try.
Oh, Lord.
I love it when people try.
At least, so Rehana, Malik-Mbanga.
Yeah, Mbanga.
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 So I was somewhat.
So the M is silent.
The M is like, you know how you say McDonald's, McTime?
So it's
the same. Mbanga.
It's like a partially silent M.
Rehana, Malik-Mbanga.
Mbanga. Yeah.
Mbanga.
Where
are we chatting with you from? Like
I'm in Edmonton.
Oh, another Edmonton. We should make a list of, so you all know, but not near you, right, Corey?
No, well, whenever
I'm learning.
I actually do a lot of speaking and work in Edmonton, so where I am sometimes, but not where I am right now today.
Okay.
I'm the other side of the country right now. I'm in little tiny Prince Edward Island. So I'm in the exact.
I want to get a map of Canada because it's about time that I got my geography right with all you Canadians on our show.
I'm fairly close to Maine. I'm like 5 hours from Maine.
We almost came to visit you, but I don't think we were allowed in. So
I've always wanted to visit PI. I hear it's very beautiful.
Like I always say to everybody, but 8 months a year, it's the most gorgeous little place. It's like, what do they call it? God's country or whatever they like to say for the, the outdoors type stuff. It's gorgeous in the 8 months a year, 4 months a year. It's not so much. And we're about to get into the not so much. It's
better than if I showed you my window outside. We're covered in snow. We have flurries coming down and everything. So.
Well, you know what? I will say, not to keep it on weather too long, but Edmonton, the one difference is it starts way earlier there than it used to, and it goes longer. But the difference in PEI is Edmonton, like when you're driving on the roads, the way it works, because it's the way it's set up, like the roads are half decent. Here, like it's just like you're in it's like you're in that Mad Max with
oh my gosh!
It's like there's snow drifts in the middle of the highway and stuff.
Wow!
So it's like almost like Newfoundland is the same. So it's a different type of winter down here, and then also it's dry in Edmonton. So I always say, like, you could freeze to death in Edmonton without knowing. You can't freeze to death here without knowing. You know every minute of it. It's like it's all through your bones. It's like a New York type wet cold.
It's that wet cold.
I know that.
Yeah. So it's to that point. It's gorgeous here 8 months a year. I always stand by that. So if either of you want to come visit us 8 months in the year.
Noted.
Not the winter. So I guess, Rehana, I know you and I have chatted, quite a bit online, but now that we're in the offline, the real world, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, a little bit about your story? And don't worry about how deep you go, because we're going to dive in deeper anyway. But just so the listeners and viewers who are meeting you for the first time may get a feel for who you are.
Sure. I'm Rehana Malik-Mbanga. I'm from Zambia, immigrated to Canada 10 years ago with my husband, who has a huge family here, and they're from Zimbabwe. We started Stimbok, is the company I run, and we do a whole range of different projects across the board. I've dabbed into agriculture, renewable energy. These days we deal in PPE. So that's our career at Stimbok. I went to university in South Africa. I studied psychology as my major. Worked in mental health for a number of years, got burnt out, and wanted something different. I am very passionate about people. For many years, I thought I needed to become a doctor, and I realized that my gift is something completely different. And my gift with human beings, and why I felt I needed to become a doctor was to try and solve people's problems. And ailments. But as I was listening to your conversation earlier, it's all about the mindset, and it's all about who you are, and purpose and passion. Now that's my biggest driver, is to connect people, to help people connect the dots, to help people find their purpose, quote unquote. But and I do that by being an example to the other women in my community and people in my community that I network with.
Wow, I love it. And when you mentioned PPE, I mean, I don't like the word assume. I'm gonna conclude, which really is the same thing, but I'm gonna conclude that most people know what that is in the world we're in today. But
Yes.
but for those that don't, that when we say PPE, that we're talking about basically in relation to COVID, like for example,
Masks, sanitizers, things.
Mask sanitizers, test kits, you name it.
Now, are you on the manufacturing side?
No, I don't think anyone can compete with China. But
well, I do know some manufacturers, so we'll have to do that. So
yay!
That's why I'm asking. I know the other side looking for manufacturers, but I also know manufacturers. So
I work with a wonderful woman out in Hong Kong. She has all the connections to a vast supply chain. And since April this year, we pivoted our focus in response to COVID and the pandemic, and have been working with PPE and trying to reach the clients we have across the board. So we've delivered to about, I think, 8 countries, 7 of which are in Africa and Canada, of course.
Amazing. Amazing. So you say that you're connecting with the companies and organizations that you've worked with. So is it a specific industry? Is it a focus, or like?
No, I mean, like in Canada, in the beginning, Canada's been amazing because they put it on a public platform, and we filled out a form, got all licensing, and now we're allowed to trade here in Canada and to supply, and the government has helped us a lot, put us on different platforms, and be able to meet needs. Like there are a few smaller communities that we can supply that don't have, like, are not able to order huge amounts like the government would. In Africa, I do a lot of work in Africa since 2017. I've traveled quite a bit to several different countries, and just based on the networks we have in those countries and the work we've done there, when COVID hit, I just reached out and said, do you guys need this? Is there a market for this? And the response was quite overwhelming.
Wow, amazing. So it's about just relationships, right? Keeping relationships.
It is. And I mean, that's the biggest thing I've learned in my career as an entrepreneur. The biggest gold nugget, I feel, is you never know who you're meeting when you meet them the first time at an airport. I have one lady I met, a couple I met on a flight, and now we chat all the time. And, you know, I love their energy, and I follow their work. I've had people I've met next in like a terminal, and I chat with them, and they've been connected to something else. I've had people, obviously, you grow up with. There are people when you immigrate to a new country, you're forced to get to know new people, meet and network with different people. When you're from a minority group like myself, I mean, being Black in Edmonton, you're forced to go out of your comfort zone and network and mix. And everybody, you'll be surprised how everybody is sent to you. There's no coincidences. Everyone is there for a reason. And if you do respect and take time to nurture those relationships, they're actually very rewarding.
I love that. You know, friends of mine joke, they're like, you know, you can go to the supermarket. This was, I mean, even now with a mask, it doesn't matter, and make it a road trip. Like it's always an adventure for me. I'm like, you never know who you're going to meet at a 7-Eleven or at the grocery store. Like it's exciting for me. I don't have to go to another country.
You sound like my husband. He won't go out to the store in his sweats. He's like, I don't know who I'm going to meet. No. I can go in my
sometimes
PJs.
I go in my sweats. It doesn't matter. But I'm always excited because to me, once I go out into the world, I feel like who knows? It's exciting for me. Like interactions happen. I can meet the next most amazing person, right?
Exactly.
And the most amazing experience. So,
exactly.
And it's a fun way of living life because everything's sort of an adventure. So I love that you've also taken the opportunity to say, hey, listen, I met somebody on an airplane or at the terminal and stayed in touch. Who's to say where we have to meet the people that we connect with?
Well, at least look at us. Look at how we met. We talk about this all the time, but Rehana, you wouldn't know this, but Elise and I met at a Hughes conference, the one that happened just after Wayne Dyer passed away. And it was actually my girlfriend and her met in a food line, talked for a little bit.
Well, there you go. You can attest. I started talking to Shelly. I'm like, hey, how's it going? We were in this line. So
there you go,
standing in a concession line.
And then the wild part is Elise and I kept more connected because Shelly's not as active on Facebook. And, that goes back 6 years. And here we are working together. But I'll tell you, I'll add a quote about that because it popped into my head when you said this. And Rehana, I know you were about to say something too, so I'll let you jump right back in. But this quote always stuck out to me. I don't know if you both are familiar with Les Brown, but Les Brown asked him about synchronicity. To what you're talking about there's no such thing as coincidences. And I said, what's your thoughts around synchronicity? And he delivered this quote that struck me through my, that basically struck me through my core. He said, synchronicity is just God's way of staying anonymous.
That's amazing.
And I really believe that's the case. You could say coincidence is the way of, you could use that same thing, use the word coincidence, but just the idea that this stuff is, in my opinion, synchronicities are happening every day. And I've talked about it on our previous ones here that the more I notice them, now I mark them down. So the more I notice them and mark them down, these coincidences happen more frequently and they seem to serve me more. Like, meaning, I don't mean like I'm their master. I just mean like they seem to come up more and more. And then all of a sudden I can see, wait, this happened because I acted on this. And just so you know, Elise, the reason that I followed up with you was intentional. It's because I had just read Celestine Prophecy about how people come into your life for a reason. And I thought, why did Shelly and her, only them? I mean, Shelly connected with other people and so did I there. But why did those two connect? And then I connected with her. And I can't let this not continue. So I don't know if I sent the first message or you did, but the reason I said I'm going to keep at this is because I said I'm not going to let this just become another, hey, I met somebody one time and never followed up on it.
And I think we talked about coming to visit the villages because that's where I was living, and I was like, oh, are you guys going to come? We did a quick follow up actually right after that event during that same time. And anyway, here we are with you, Rehana.
I know I interjected.
It's amazing though, like the journey. Like, who thought I'd be like co-hosting on anything online, really? Like I always thought I'd be an actress or something like that, but like it wasn't really in my trajectory to like have a show and then do these like bi-monthly events and weekly things. But I like it. It's fun. I get to meet amazing people. I don't even have to go anywhere. I'm like, where are you? What are you doing? So it's fun. And you showing up too today, making the choice to say, this is where I'm going to spend my energy today. I mean,
exactly.
That was the choice.
And the PPE, like as far as that, speaking about synchronicities, did you see that being part of your pattern? I mean, obviously you didn't know.
So, it's amazing you're sharing this story. And PPE happened this way. I was breastfeeding my son, trying to put my firstborn to sleep. And one of my sister's friends from university, his wife is the connector. So this is how it all works. So his wife, I follow her. Her name is Lulu Hangala. She does a lot of work in Zambia, quite a big personality. And I follow her work, and I find it so admirable how she's grown in her career. And I noticed she put this thing out. She has a store called Afro Shop. And she put this thing out and she's like, we're selling this PPE. And I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Canada needs this. Because all I saw on the news was shortage. And I reached out to her and I'm like, how do I get supplies? And she right away she was open. And that's the thing is, when you're connected to the right people, she was open, in 2 seconds created a WhatsApp group between me and her main link. She didn't say, no, this money is only for me. I'm not sharing with you. Get away from me. I don't know you. in 2 minutes, she opened a door. And that door has created this wealth for me because I've had access to amazing things in China that I wouldn't ordinarily have access to. But it also allowed me to help other entrepreneurs in different parts of the world, participate in being a solution. And then for Canada, we've also been able to help out and be a solution here. And just from there, there's this overflow of blessing, overflow of access. But just the same way you shared how you and Elise met, it's the same thing. It's all from connection that I got to link up with Lulu, and Lulu connected me to Miu Miu, and then Miu Miu gave me access to this, and then one thing after the other. And now, we have a great relationship.
Love that. And, it's even how we got connected was through a mutual acquaintance who said, you guys need to meet each other. I think the smoke will rise when you guys meet each other. And same idea, right? Like, I think, especially in a social world now, that this is the way of the future. I mean, to be connected through somebody else every day, I would say every day of the year, somebody on Facebook reaches out and connects me to somebody else. Every day.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And that's, I think, the biggest nugget for any entrepreneur or anyone out there who wants to step into their purpose, into their passion, and do something that they find very exciting, is just you never know, take that leap of faith, take that step, put some action, and it will be shocking what unfolds afterwards. And I always say to people, what is meant for you will unfold in such an amazing way, and what isn't, you'll just move on to the next thing. And that for me has been one of my biggest lessons.
So what are your thoughts about that in terms of building that connection? I just like both of your thoughts on this, based on, I know it's going to be different for every person you ask this question to, but I'd like to get your thoughts on this, because I think this is something that's really served me well, and it's not easy to do because anybody who knows me knows my schedule is pretty intense. So to do this is hard, but whenever I get introduced by somebody else, I make every effort to say, let's jump on a Zoom call so we can connect face to face now that we can't in person. And in most cases, it wouldn't be feasible anyway, because we're all over the world. But my question is, what are your thoughts on the value now in the world we're in, being able to do that, to actually connect face to face or Zoom or online? Because I found that better things always happen whenever it's face to face. If it's a phone conversation, I think phone has changed a lot, and I can't feel the same energy. And so I just love to get your guys' thoughts on this, that yes, we can't let these things pass us by, but if you don't meet them in person and you're connected online, what are your guys' thoughts about the first interaction being, let's jump on a Zoom call and actually introduce ourselves to one another? So maybe Rehana, what's your thought on it?
I think face-to-face connection is amazing. In-person connection is even more amazing. The energy you feel from the other person, there's just a sense of security, trust. There's a lot of bonds that are created in just that moment when you get to meet someone and you spend one-on-one interaction with them. And then, you're right, getting on a Zoom call and seeing the person's face and watching their features, watching the way they react and they respond, and feeling their energy, because we do transfer a lot of energy to one another. And from there, you're like, no, not for me. Yes, for me. And you make your decision that way. But I love the ability to have access to Zoom and to be able to do these things. But at the same time, I wouldn't minimalize the connection that you do have on, like, actual in person is mind blowing. And for me, those have been the best connections I've had in businesses. Those in-person relationships where people can actually see you first and foremost in your own space, like hold your own space, and then you're able to see them in their own space. So either I come out and watch you at one of your talks, or I'm in one of your workshops or events, and then you come to one of mine, and then there's just this amazing connection that happens there, that you actually see the person for what you see them for. It's very different.
Love it. What are your thoughts, Elise? Either question to Rehana or your thoughts on that approach to building connections?
What was question 2?
Well, if you have a question for her or
okay. Well, I'm going to quickly respond. So for me as a coach, I've been working, when I work with clients, I've really actually encouraged my clients to work virtually. And I know that sounds a little bit different than like the typical one-on-one. I love one-on-one, but I also feel like as long as I can see the person, and this is what I say, I've never done coaching calls ever. It's always been, I want to see you, right? Because I can see you, Rehana. Like I get a vibe from you. I get goosebumps, just as many goosebumps when I'm having, you know, an interaction like this as in person. Now I love the experience of being in person in different environments and experiencing new things and sharing food and experiences in person. But like working with clients one-on-one, if I can see them, I can still feel their expression. I can still see the shift that's happening through our session and in the process. So for me, I've been using Zoom or WhatsApp or Google Docs. I mean, who knew there were so many platforms before this global plot twist? Because it makes it more convenient for my guests too. Like it's sometimes there's something about having a healing process and an awakening and a new awareness in your own home.
Right.
Because if somebody's in their home and that's the space where they started to evolve and started to restory their lives and they're starting to have a new relationship with where they already live. Because for coaching too, if you go to an office or you go outside of your place and that's where the shift is happening, and then you're going to go home into the environment in which you have been challenged or your family environment has been a certain way, there is a difference than having that experience and having that evolution and having that shift happen at home, because now the home is the place where all this beauty and growth is taking place. So if we're looking at it that way, I see an advantage. If you're looking at it from a networking perspective, like I love speaking on stage. Like I was just at a conference and a keynote speaker like Tuesday at the Solopreneur Conference. And I was like looking at myself. That's weird for me, like to have an audience out there and I can't see anyone. I love that interaction as a speaker. I love interacting with my environment, with the people that are there, because everything's always different. You know this, Corey. I'm more of an improv freestyle speaker. I don't have things really set and planned. I love to interact with the audience and have it unfold, like as we unfold together in the present. It's kind of challenging to do that at an event where you're basically looking at yourself, speaking to yourself without that response. So I think it really depends on the situation. It was a long response and an answer, but it really just kind of depends.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I mean, like it works in North America, but I do a lot of business in Africa, and in the African culture, there's a lot of connection and shaking a person's hand, speaking to a person face to face is a very big part of, you know, the huge cultural aspect. And we've tried doing a lot of business, like, you know, virtually. It works with my generation, older generations, not really. So, you know, I can see where it works in maybe the environment that you operate in and the space that you operate in as a coach. But like when you're trying to sign an agricultural deal that will impact a few million people, it's very different. It feels it's very different, and I'm grateful. I do really miss traveling and going there and connecting with people, because there's just so much more work you can do. I've learned so much about how people communicate as well. People say things to your face and then they don't follow up, they don't do this. There's so many languages, ways of communicating. Some people are not direct and they can't tell you how they feel and what they don't like. And then you get an email with or some legal documents you have to fill and you're like, oh, this is what they're trying to say. So yeah, for me, I hear you. I guess it's just the different scenarios that we work out of.
Absolutely. And I do too. I do live in the Villages, which is the biggest retirement community in the world. So in a lot of my clients, I was working with their 8-year-old inner child, but they were 80. So getting them to feel comfortable online and get online, you know, and I'm talking one-on-one. I'm not talking about, you know, working in an environment where the outreach is millions. I mean, I don't know how many people I actually reach with one person, but I know what you're saying. So again, and I agree with Rehana, it really depends on the situation. It depends on the nature of the interaction and what the intent is, right? What the intended outcome is from the interaction itself. So.
Well, and to that point, just to kind of finish this part off before we move into a different area, from my end, you know, I'm sort of comparing it now to the fact that we can't do it in person whatsoever. Like, if we don't have the choice, and it's the choice for me of over the phone or email or getting on a Zoom call for the first time ever, meeting you. But because again, this is a lot of times I'm talking, it's a referral through somebody else I already know. So like, you guys got to meet each other. But even if we could meet in person, they might be living in, you know, who knows where, right? Puerto Rico, and I might be here. So we're not going to be able to meet in person anyway. For me, I think because COVID has forced us to even do more of this, I feel like out of the choices of over the phone, email, texting, or being on a Zoom call, every day
is the best.
Yeah. On a Zoom call. If you gave me the choice, though, being on a Zoom call and being in person, being able to, well, shake a hand back in the day, now do an elbow, whatever that is, you gave me that choice every day of the week, I want to be in person. So to me, be in person is always going to trump everything. But out of the other options I have right now, what I'm getting at is I'll never, unless the person doesn't want to do it, I'll never stick with, hey, let's text each other, even though we've never met.
Right, absolutely.
Let's face-to-face on Zoom. And I say Zoom as the example. The irony is we're not even using Zoom right now.
I know we're on StreamYard.
But it's just like Zooming seems to be the in thing to say. So Rehana, let's flip to the other side. So COVID happens, you're doing PPE. And I mean, we can talk because you are also an author, you're a speaker. But just on this area for a second, whenever this all happened, how did you guys first respond? Meaning, like, did you go, uh-oh, this is going to change everything. This is going to ruin what we're doing, our business, what have you. And then all of a sudden you said, wait a minute, this is something Canada needs and North America needs. Or was it something you embraced right away? I'm just curious to see how everybody's kind of dealt with the fact that we were dealt a new hand of cards that we didn't expect.
So, I mean, like, for me, the beauty is Stimbok doesn't have any loans. We don't have any big loans, or we're not obligated to pay a monthly amount every 2 weeks or you know, whatever. A lot of what I've done, we've operated on from money we've made organically or from my husband's pocket, poor guy. But when the pandemic hit, for me, I was already on maternity leave. Last year, I got back from my last trip in January, a really brilliant trip we did to South Africa and Nigeria, the two places we've been working out of and trying to develop projects there. Full of energy, excited, and then I did my women talk. I do a women talk with Bridget Lessard, and it's celebrating Canadian women of African heritage, and we celebrate that in the Black History Month. So February went full on into Black History Month celebrations, getting the talk ready, had a few women come out and speak. And then a week later, I just couldn't get up anymore. I was so exhausted. This is 2019. And I thought I had maybe got some funky flu or something from one of the trips. So I was just overly exhausted. A week later, found out we were having another baby, 4 years gap between my last and this child. So the reason I'm sharing is just to build up to the uncertainty and what goes on in the life of an entrepreneur. So fast track, the worst pregnancy ever. Everything you can think of that can go wrong in this pregnancy. Became hypertensive, became eclamptic. Like, so many things just happened. I was hospitalized, bedridden. I can go on and on. Baby comes in the most dramatic way with an emergency C-section. Fortunately, I survived. Fortunately, he survived.
Yay.
And a day after I gave birth, had a stroke. And went home with baby after a few days. Lots of treatment, lots of intervention. Couldn't see out of one of my eyes for a while. I had this huge black spot and couldn't understand why. Found out I had a huge bulge from the stroke in my eye. So like a huge bulge that if I didn't treat that right away would go blind. So this all happened. So this is October, November, December. we then noticed my son isn't breathing well. He's like really sick. And so we're like taken to the Stollery, which is our children's hospital here. And then they say he has a common cold, send him home. We'll try this intervention. Then he wouldn't eat, take him back in, stops breathing in the emergency room with me in my hands. They intubate him. And so whatever everyone else has experienced frontline with COVID is what we got to experience back in December. He stops breathing, intubated. And there's so many things that are happening. But in the background, why I'm mentioning this is that my business is still running. I still have things on the go. There's still people who need answers. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're alone, basically. You are a decision maker.
So solopreneur.
Yes. And then because I jump into different things, there's many, the project is not like one focus. It's not one thing. It's several different projects with different facets. So in April, when the pandemic was declared for us, access to PPE and what was going on with COVID was very personal to me because my son had something similar to the symptoms of COVID. He was intubated, could not breathe, had a heart attack on Christmas Eve, was resuscitated after 3 minutes. This was an 8-week-old baby. And we, for the first time, got to feel a sense of deep, deep loss. I don't think like this grief loss in that moment. So when the pandemic hit, it was very real for myself, my sister, my husband, people that lived in this home. It was very real for us. And I was like very worried about what African countries were doing at that time. I was concerned that they wouldn't have access to high quality because when you live in Canada, we get access to the best of the best. We get access to what is called in China whitelist. But other people might not get access to that because they're not considered as important as other Canadians or North Americans are considered. And so at that time, that was the light bulbs going on in my head was, how do I get access? How do I get people this? My sister-in-law called me. She owns a pharmacy in Zimbabwe. And she was like, Rehana, do you know how to get this stuff? I'm looking for this stuff. Another lady called me from Nigeria because the assumption is that because we're Canadian, we have access and we probably are producing. But unbeknown to the whole world, everybody relies on one country to have access to these things. And so in that moment, the decision was, okay, either I continue to be exhausted by my issues that I just experienced, or we pivot and we jump on this bandwagon of PPE and we actually become a solution. We make some money and we get to try and do some like grassroots work. Mm-hmm. And basically that's the whole mindset, the whole story, the whole aha moment. I think it was so personal and that's why we jumped on it.
How is your son?
He's amazing. He turned 1. He's walking all over.
That's what I was like, okay, I just want to know, how's he doing?
I locked the door so he can't come in here. If you hear him banging, then that's him.
We want to meet him. I would love to meet him.
Well,
I don't know if that's opening up a can of worms, but I would love to meet him. What is his name?
His name is Tanaka, which means we are complete.
Wow. Tanaka.
So
Tanaka.
You hit on a thing I think is really important, Rehana, because I don't, I try to stay away from the political side of everything going on right now, like with COVID, with masks, what have you. I don't think it's value to anybody else that I put my thoughts out there on it. But one thing I will say is what you just said is so crucial, your experience with it. And so I think that the big challenge I'm seeing now is people are discounting other people's experience with it, good or bad. And so I think you always have to say, just because I'm not talking for myself, but if somebody says, I don't feel it's anything at all to worry about, but for somebody that like an elderly person in a manor or somebody in the villages who may get it, or my son who's 3 months.
Or a mom whose son went through something similar like Rehana.
Yeah, or our situation, we have a 3-month-old who has MCAD, which is a disorder where if he can't eat, he goes into a coma or a seizure. Well, obviously, if he gets COVID, that's going to be pretty major. And so I can see both sides, but what I'm getting at is I think that's the big challenge. Is sometimes people discount anybody who has an immune thing and just say, well, then they should just stay home forever. But I mean, but there is a realness to this because you experienced it. We could experience it with our son. And I think because maybe most young, healthy people, it might not affect them as much. It's easy to say there's nothing to it. But I think it's important to also understand there are true casualties in this right now. And
yes.
I just want to point that out because what you said, you experienced it. You went through this. And, it's the same thing with the whole mask or not to mask thing. It's, at the end of the day, you experienced it. So who could argue with what you've experienced firsthand? And so I just want to put it out there because I do feel there's a lot of people right now. It's easy to, on one side or the other, say, oh, it's just all blown up or it's a scam or what have you. But there are real casualties.
Can I just want to say one thing, Rehana, in relationship to something that you said that was so profound, Corey, in relationship to this, but in relationship to absolutely everything, is discounting other people's experiences. That is an epidemic. That is a pandemic that has been around long before this global plot twist pandemic. And if we can take anything from this, it's about recognizing that everyone's experiences have value. Whether we can relate to them or not is really not our business. It's recognizing that everyone's experiences matter. And if we could all do this in our own space, from our own place of being, then the world would change on it like that. Because we wouldn't be putting our expectations or our limitations on somebody else's experience to make us feel better or to justify why we don't feel better. So that's a really, really, really big statement.
Well, and
Rehana, I'll let you take it, but it hit me like, wow, that's it. That's like the answer. If there's an answer to everything, that would be it. It's about recognizing that every single person's experiences matter to that person. No matter
or recognizing your experience matters. I think that it starts with us.
Yes, for sure.
Individually, I think a lot of people come to me and say, how do you do business? I want to do business. And I'm like, what do you have to offer? What's in your life that you feel you want to share? Where is a gap that gives you, like, irks you and you want to fill that gap?
Right.
There are other people who feel like you right there is a solution. So a solution to something is a business. I tell people, like, you can get out there and you can do it. I guess having a personal story, as you said, and having that experience gives me more fuel and gives me more passion to do more of it. But yeah.
So do you feel, based on what you're seeing right now, I mean, you would obviously see that if you guys are busier based on, let's say, what people call the second wave or what have you, do you feel that from what you're seeing, are things getting better or worse, or what are you seeing out there?
In Africa at the moment, COVID almost doesn't exist in people's minds. People have continued to move on with life because life there has always had challenges. If it's not HIV, it's poverty, it's hunger, it's teenage pregnancies. There's a lot of issues that people face on the continent in different countries. In my country specifically, we have a lot of political stuff going on right now. We're going through elections. And then Zambia has a lot of debt, So there's a lot of inflation, a lot of things going on there. The country cannot sustain COVID. It's just too big an animal to handle. It requires extra staff. It requires probably a whole unit created for COVID. It requires training. It requires, the health system can't sustain this. And that's something we're actually working on in the background with my team in Zambia, is to try and see how we can help the the health system from which angle, and we're concentrating primarily on testing and the laboratories in Zambia, trying to see how we can help them upscale the laboratories there. That's one project we're currently working on. But COVID, I mean, like, I speak to my parents all the time, telling them to social distance. It's very hard because in our culture, what is social distancing? You sleep, you go up sharing a room with your cousins. That individuality is not something like in North America. So it's been very hard culturally. And then one person said to me, one of my friends out in Nigeria is like, yeah, Rehana, you can social distance because you're probably 1 million people in Edmonton. There are like 60 million people in my city. Like, yeah, what social distancing? So it depends where it is, and how people are taking it, and whether or not politically a government can sustain COVID. So it gets swept under the carpet. I'm not attacking any specific government, but that is what's happening, and that's what's being seen is, it's there in the background. Some governments are very equipped, they've gotten financing for it, so they run with it, and it's become a money-making thing. Whereas here in Canada, right now in Edmonton, we've had a 2-week kind of like try and not go anywhere, stay at home lockdown. It's not heavily enforced, but if you can work from home right now, they've encouraged us because our numbers are going higher. I think we have a 50-bed capacity here in the city, and it's scary. I think 20 people passed away just the other day, which are things that are happening. But as Lee said, people, it's their story. It's not my story. People can die. It doesn't affect me until it becomes more real. So people are still, and then the mask thing drives me crazy because people wear the wrong masks. Like, I can't understand this. Like, if you can blow, I saw this thing someone shared where put a lighter on. If you can blow out the flame, that mask is not efficient or effective. And because in the beginning with PPE, there was not enough access to like the surgical masks that were needed for essential workers, we were encouraged to use just ordinary, make something at home, makeshift. And that for me, I understand the whole health, trying to get the mindset about wearing a mask, perception around it. But, we do need to wear the right PPE to keep us protected and those around us protected. So in Canada, there's a lot of work being done. My children are back at school, and in their school, there are a lot of infrastructure. There's a lot of guidelines that have been set up to protect them. We're very conscious and very aware. But then you see people do the weirdest things. Like the other day in Costco, a lady put her fingers in her mouth, licked her fingers, and went and opened up a plastic bag and put the meat in there. And I'm like, you're still gonna touch things with your saliva. Like, everybody's different. So it's just those small things. I think it's so unnatural for everyone that it's very hard to get our mindset around social distancing and just staying at home and sanitizing your hands constantly and wearing a mask constantly. So yeah, I'm not too sure right now, to be honest. That's the honest answer.
Yeah, well, and I mean, we're all experiencing it for the first time. Everybody that's in our everybody that's pretty much alive right now, there's not very many, I don't think, they've ever experienced anything like this. What was the last time there was a pandemic like this? Was what, 1918? So there wouldn't be a whole lot of people that would have experienced that. And if they did, they were probably a really young kid. And so, to your point, I don't think any of us really know. More people, some people know more than others as to what to do because they've been through different types of things, like SARS and stuff like that in the past. But the average person, I don't think we're all just learning as we go.
Yeah.
Like, and the whole idea, like, I mean, I've had people say to me, in the car with me, saying, "What's that person doing?" Because you'll see somebody leaving town, and we know that means they have to drive on the highway for 45 minutes, and they're wearing the mask by themselves in a car. And you're like, well, who else nobody's in the car with you, and you own the car. So, I mean, like, I could, I don't want to go too far into it, but it's just the idea of, I don't know how much that protects you. If you're going to drive in the car by yourself, and I just think, like, as you said, it's not natural probably for us to wear a mask. So they're probably driving, complaining they have to wear a mask, but yet they're driving for an hour and a half wearing a mask in the car by themselves. So
yeah.
it's all new to everybody. Is what
all I know is I'm COVID exhausted, even though it's been a very good time for our business. I am very COVID exhausted. I do miss life. I miss going out once in a while. I miss eating out at restaurants. I miss traveling a lot. This year has been, I guess, exhausting overall. With Black Lives Matter, if you are from Nigeria, there was a lot happening a few months ago with a movement called NSARS, and there, a few people were massacred, in broad daylight. So there's a lot that this year has brought, and I think I'm 2020. I don't even know if I can call it COVID exhausted. I'm 2020 exhausted. So yeah.
Well, I don't think you're alone. And I want to ask you, just before we close, I want to ask you about your book and, I mean, being an author and a speaker and what have you. I'll just share this with people as a lighter type moment on this, is I saw this, and I'm paraphrasing because I saw it once really quickly, but I saw this little image, and it was, I think, like Moses and God or something, and somebody in God and or higher power, whatever you believe in. But basically, it was like, in this case, it was God, and let's say it was whoever, Moses or somebody. He said, did you get all the stuff done that I asked for the 2020s? And then whoever it was said 2020s. Oh, I thought you meant 2020. And he said, whoa, you put 10 years of stuff all in 1 year? And that's what I feel like 2020 has been.
I remember when this year started, because there was this whole thing, this is the start of a new decade, and I jumped on that bandwagon. I'm like, what am I doing for 2020? And I mean, 2020 started very harsh for us. We were in ICU with my son when the year started. But we were hopeful because he had survived something that was so big for us. And we had hope and we had renewal in our souls. So I was very excited too for 2020 and all the goals we had. But we had no idea what was coming. And for me as a Black person in North America, this year has had so many pockets. Like the emotions and the waves of 2020 have been amazing. There have been great moments. Like now when I switch on the TV here in Canada and I watch adverts and I see people that look like myself, I get so excited. I get so happy. So 2020 has been great that way. There's a new show on Netflix called Jingle Jangle. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a Christmas story.
We just watched it, my fiance and I, like literally yesterday or the day before.
And it's a Black production. I was so excited. I mean, there's music from Africa in there, and I'm like, yes.
I loved how it was it was very international to me.
Yes.
Like it was so
British and American accents.
I get goosebumps when I think about it, because like there were just such diversity in like all of it. Was like, wow, how cool is this?
So 2020 has been amazing that way.
Huh?
It's brand new, I know, but how have I not seen this yet? Shelley's like the Christmas person queen.
It just showed up. I think it just dropped, right? And it has Ricky Martin, so it has the Latino side, it has the African American side, it has the it's everybody's in it. Like there's all different characters, and they break out into song and they do flash mob dancing, and like I loved it.
Yeah, well, we're gonna check it out. I just looked at the image for it, and I think Forrest Whitaker's in it as well. I'm a huge fan of Forrest Whitaker, and what's his name? I forget his first name, but the Key.
Keenan, one of the Keenan brothers.
Yeah. And so anyway, now I'm going to check it out. So thank you for bringing it up. I mean, we would have thought
it's so funny that you just brought that up, but we just decided to watch it, and it was like perfect.
Yeah, I think as a society, we are making strides. In certain areas, we're going in the right direction finally.
We are.
I don't think for most people it's going quick enough, but at least it's happening. Whereas you could look at the opposite and see how long it didn't go anywhere. And you're talking hundreds, well, thousands, but hundreds at least of years that it didn't move forward, and now it is. And that's even for, I think, gender equality. We're seeing more female CEOs, we're seeing more female directors in movies, and they're making more money than the men. What does that mean? But I mean, we're seeing so much stuff happen, I think, in the world that's going in the right direction. But again, like I said, I don't think it's fast enough for everybody, but at least it's happening.
You know, one of the things that came of this event, this the third event of the Flip Your Script is waiting and creating. Are you waiting for the change to happen, right? And if you are waiting now, you've probably were waiting for the change to happen before. Are you a creator? Are you creating, right? Are you creating the change? If you're creating the change now, you probably were creating before this even happened. So are you waiting or creating? And I think that that's a good question that we can each ask ourselves individually. Have we been waiting for something to happen? Well, if you've been waiting, something's happening. There's been change. Now, you might not like it, but if you're part of creating the change, then you could be more of an influence, right, in the change that is being created. So that's something to really touch,
That's
to
lovely.
bring home, So do you want to create the change? I have a lot of clients who are like fighting against what is happening right now, big with the Black Lives Matter, and they are tattooed white guys from like you'd never imagine, like that they would be on the front lines. And I'm like, do you really want to fight against something that already is that you don't like, or do you want to start creating the life and the world that you want to raise your kids in? So be the creator as opposed to the waiter, And I think that that's a good question to ask. And Rehana, you are a creator. You were a creator before. You created during your own personal trauma before the global plot twist happened, and you're continuing to create and being the solution. And I feel blessed to have had you be in your presence, because
Thank you.
you're a gift, and you recognize your own value enough to recognize that you can be the solution, not only for your family, but really for the change that you want to see in the world.
Absolutely. So, Rehana, as we start to close things down, can you tell us a little bit about being an author? Can you tell us about what you've written so people know more about that? About the speaking side, like, are you still going down that path? And then, of course, the final thing is how we can learn more. And I know that's a lot to fit into one.
Yeah, and I want to know how you spell your company's name too, because
it's STIMBOK. And it's my husband's nickname. It was a nickname he was teased with when he was younger, and he's decided to make it something powerful.
So is it a .com, .ca?
.com.
Okay.
.com.
We'll make sure to put that in the
And I'm not sure, is it public? Like, so is it somebody who's looking for PPE that we can contact your company?
So we have an online store, and the online store is basically retail. And retail, it was a hard one for me to shift into because it's smaller. When you're used to dealing with big numbers like 30,000, 50, 100, a million, and then you're like $4. it's very, very, the shift is weird. But I wanted to be able to offer moms like myself in the city who wanted access to high quality, affordable PPE. And so we have the online store, but our biggest business is wholesale. And that's the field that we're playing on quite a lot.
Well, I want to stay in touch because I have an organization, an initiative that I'm working with, and it's a lot of money behind the scenes, and it's international, and their focus is PPE right now. So I'd like to put you in touch and see how you guys can move forward. I'd rather just put you in touch and go for it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
So we can reach out and become friends if we're not already on Facebook or whatever, and set up a Zoom, or I like to do Messenger because then I know when we spoke last, it's all right there.
That's like me with WhatsApp. So yeah, no,
we can WhatsApp too. That works.
For sure. Thank you.
As long as I can see, and like with Zoom, you have your Zoom meeting and then you're out. Like I like to know when was it the last time we spoke, then we can kind of make notes and it's all in one place.
Yes, for sure.
All right, awesome. Perfect.
To answer your question, so I've been published in an anthology with Women Talk, and it's called When Women Talk. My first public publication. Is that the right way? Yeah. But it in 2016. Wow. 2018. I can't remember. 2016. Yes, is when we were published. It was a best-selling, international best-selling book on Amazon. And it was a series of different stories, of different women's stories of who they are or what they want to share. Mine was sharing how diverse my background is. I'm from a very, very mixed cultural background. I have Jewish, Indian, African, Italian, God knows what else in my blood. So, and my family is from all over the world. So I'm very well-traveled, very, I feel worldly. And then into speaking, I still speak. My main focus at the moment is encouraging other women around me to share their story and to speak. And that's through the Women Talk Africa platform. And we have an event every year during Black History Month for women like myself to come out and meet other women like themselves and share their stories, and hopefully also to share with other women from different backgrounds that Black African immigrant women, Canadian women are just as powerful and special as they are. And that has been a focus there. Do I talk about the chapter in this?
Yeah, you absolutely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm writing a chapter in your book, Corey, that is going to be published soon. And that's about the uncertainty for me, the uncertainty and the emotions that come with being an entrepreneur. There is never a right time. I think Elise mentioned this, that people, are you a creator or are you waiting? And a lot of people wait for this perfect time to actually step and do this. And the time is now, and you are your own time, and you create your own pace. And so I want to share that, you know, in my own journey, if you look at this last year, it has been crazy. If I sat down and spoke to someone, it would be very overwhelming for them because it's one problem after the other. But I've just taken all that and used that energy and put it into something positive and to create something that has impact. And so I'm sharing that it's not easy. It is exhausting some days. My son went to bed probably at 4 a.m. yesterday. My husband and I were like screaming at each other at 2 a.m. like, I have an interview at 10 o'clock. And right now he probably is rushed out to drop off our son at kindergarten, which is my run. He's stepped up and done that for me. So, I mean, there's never a right time. There's always something going on in your life. And it's emotional. It's emotional. The emotional stress of running your own business, being an entrepreneur, running in your purpose and stepping into your power is not easy, but you can manage it and you can fill it with being positive, surrounding yourself with people like Elise and Corey and so many other people in my network here that are positive and have great energy and are out there. And there's some days that you just don't want to do it. And I just want to sit and watch Grey's Anatomy.
I hope you honor that when you want to, because those are my best moments.
Yes.
And I'm like, I'm going to binge. I think it was a week ago or a week and a half ago. I mean, I had my computer with me, but I did a Shameless. I don't know if you know Shameless.
I do know Shameless.
I binged I was up to season 5 already. So I had to rewatch some, but I was up. Like I did it 11 hours on a Monday. Like I woke up in the morning. I was like, brought my computer to bed. I was 11 o'clock at night in that whole week. And I loved it. Like I loved, and I missed all my people now. I'm like, I have to find a new binge because you become so connected to
you do.
reality.
You do. I remember in university, I went through a breakup with a few of my girlfriends, and what's the show? Sex and the City got me through like that whole breakup because they became my girlfriends for a couple of months or however. Then there wasn't Netflix or anything. You had to wait for CDs, discs to watch the next one. But yeah, there's never a right time, and it, as you've seen this year it's not even certain. Big companies like I can't even name them right now have gone through the hardest shifts. They've had hits. My husband is always a big encourager for me because he's a chartered accountant, and he'll tell me, you have no idea how much debt big companies have. And, he reminds me, not to sweat the small stuff and to look at the bigger picture and to push myself to keep growing as an entrepreneur and growing my stretch. I like, your heart, you keep growing your entrepreneurial heart to take more and more and get braver out there and having a team around you. I have an amazing team of amazing women that just hold me up and keep me going and keep sharing lessons with me. So yeah, that's what my small chapter is about.
Oh, I love it. You are just such an inspiration.
Thank you. So are you.
Oh, thanks so much. I just sit here and chit chat with all y'all amazing.
No, now we need a Zoom, Corey. We need a separate Zoom.
Yes,
100%.
exactly.
We'll
The
have to
behind the scenes Zoom. We should just
For
film
sure.
that too. Just
Yeah,
show
we'll
chat
have to
about
start
everything.
aligning that up maybe where we'll have 3 hosts and then have the conversation and then have like a separate Zoom behind the scenes after.
For sure.
That'll
For
be
sure.
a future thing. So,
I
Rehana,
love
this is an absolute pleasure. We so appreciate you, so honor you. I thank you for spending the time with us today and choosing as at least to spend the time with us. And I always call it a to be continued because with a conversation like this and somebody who's doing big things like yourself, I know it's going to continue. So, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being here, and thank you for all the great work you're doing in the world.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And please go into the comments, especially on the Blue Talks Flip Your Script group, and just put in your contact information, anything that you want to share, because anybody who watches the replay can then just go in and scroll down and see, you know, your contact information without having to wait to 1 hour and 49 minutes or whatever.
For sure.
Yeah, so that would be great. And we'll stay in touch. We'll stay connected. I'll reach out next week or reach out to me even sooner, and we'll set a time to Zoom or WhatsApp.
Thank you so much, Corey. This gives me a word Rosalind and I spoke about, and Rosalind's the friend that connected Corey and I. Although Kelly introduced us to you way back through Women Talk way back when. So it's quite funny when you connect the dots that, oh yeah, we were exposed to Corey way before I actually met you. But the one word, she asked me for one word that would sum up what I feel I do and where the core of my fabric comes from. And it's an African word, and it's called Ubuntu. And it means I am because you are.
How do you spell it?
Ubuntu.
Oh, Ubuntu.
Yeah.
I've seen it before.
Ubuntu.
Yeah,
Ubuntu.
UBUNTU.
Yeah, NTU.
Isn't that
And
like
it's
a company that took that name and made something?
I'm sure it's a South African Ubuntu is a South African word, but it's a philosophy throughout Africa. And I am because you are, and that sums up what we talked about in terms of connecting and how we could get connected. And for me, that's been the core: is I am because you are.
Oh, I love
thank
that
you
so much.
much.
That's a good mind seed. Normally I ask for like a mind seed, a seed of thought to share with our viewers that they could plant in what I call their fertile mind. And when they focus on that thought or that intention, it grows and helps them grow a life that they love and love themselves in. So I love the philosophy. If we could use that word as the seed, I think it's perfect.
Love it. And just to leave you on a really good note as well, I don't know who Facebook user is. I have to go look up the name on the other screen, but they said, great talk, thank you. So Rehana, whoever Facebook user is, they loved your talk.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed it. I have so much energy. I've been like, I'm full right now. I didn't have it before I started. So thank you both so much.
Oh, that's such a huge compliment. You're our pleasure.
Feeling is mutual.
I mean, we like it too, don't we, Corey? We get, you know,
like I said, at the end of the day, with no coffee, I'm usually more higher energy and have more positivity in me than when I woke up. So
yes,
Charlene Milton is Milner. Charlene Milner is the one who said
that. Was my aunt, actually.
Oh wow!
Oh, well, your aunt says great talk.
Who's doing amazing things. She needs to get connected to you, Corey.
Okay, well, feel free to make that connection, or of course, she can reach out as well. But feel free to make the connection. I would love that.
All right. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rehana. See you soon. Thank you. Awesome stuff.
Funny was her aunt. I'm glad I went on there. Cool. I'm using my little. I'm going to be.
Yeah, no, it's all good. So at least I'm going to ask a favor, unless you need to, but I've been going pretty strong. Do you mind if I take a quick break and you talk to everybody for a sec?
Oh my gosh, just put me on the spot, Corey.
Well, okay. I didn't plan that.
Make it quick. No, just
I'll put it here and then I'll come right back on really quick. It'll be like less than 2 minutes. Less than 2 minutes.
It's fine. Just take your time. I'll chit chat. So, wow. That's all I have to say is wow. And also I want to thank everybody who's watching us live, because I know that there are so many options and so many opportunities to spend your valuable energy during this time, especially even from and even from home. I mean, there's so many virtual events out there. So taking the time and recognizing the value of each and every one of our special guests and the wisdom that they bring to the table, the potential perspective shifts that you can maybe implement in within your own life is huge. Absolutely huge. And I feel incredibly blessed. If I could just hang out online and meet all these amazing people from the comfort of my own space, I would do it all the time. So just if you need a host, any one of you, let me know, because I'd be more than happy to come on and co-host with you or even host a show. And when we go real time again, I'd be happy to show up anywhere. I love speaking, like I said, in front of large groups and having that interaction. Corey and I talked about this a little bit intermittently throughout this week, that my fiance and I, well, I'm a creator, so I've never really been a waiter. There's the plus and the minus, right? There's the blessing and the curse to being a creator. Constantly download with inspired thoughts, taking inspired actions, loving the creation process, and actually taking it to a manifestation stage as well. We just bought an incredible, well, we're buying and closing on the 9th, a motel. In the middle of all of this, we recognize this incredible opportunity after traveling the country for almost 2 years, taking our home with us. There are always opportunities to be able to travel in the world, no matter what the global climate is, and be in a safe environment and also be able to have experiences. So anything can be a reason why you wait, but there are also incredible opportunities to create. And so we bought this incredible, or we're buying, my fiance's like, we didn't close yet, we haven't bought it. And it is in this beautiful, beautiful bespoke destination. It's a one-of-a-kind destination called the Weeki Wachee. And in Florida, a lot of people think of Florida as like South Florida, Miami, the Keys, you know, that kind of an area on the Gulf. Well, there's a central part of Florida that is amazing. Ocala Forest, there's hiking trails, biking trails, there are canals that are fed with 72-degree springs all year round, blue waters, and it happens to be the area where we bought this motel. It's called the Manatee Landing Motel. It's going to turn into a unique retreat destination. And I'm sharing this with you guys because we'd love for any of you that have a tribe that you'd love to share unique experiences with, who have retreats during the year and are looking for something a little bit different and outside, right, to meet the climate of what's happening right now in the world, having separate units that you could stay in and be able to also provide an opportunity for people to have incredible personal experiences. We are on the canal, fed by the Weeki Wachee Springs, full of manatees. It's absolutely incredible. We'll be doing stand-up paddle boarding and stand-up surf. What is it called? Sup yoga, stand-up paddleboard yoga, and kayaking and fishing and biking and hiking. So it's incredible. I'm sharing the Manatee Landing Motel turned retreat because it is, a lot of people want to have these unique experiences now. And a lot of people are waiting to make decisions to travel, right? Well, hasn't stopped us. Got in the RV, bring your home with you.
I love you said you're about to say stand up paddle boarding or what have you, and when you said and we're going to be doing stand up, and I think you're going to say stand up comedy.
Can I just tell you, that's something that I love, and I started to do it, but stand up comedy is different than improv. Like I like the improv side. I know. Anyway, so we have a retreat space that we're working on, and in January we're actually going to start booking. Can I say this? That we're going to start booking retreats. Actually, starting the end of the month, we're going to start booking retreats for January. So we'll be open to retreats in January already. So I don't know how we can share that for people who are looking. And we're looking at maybe 10 to 15 is the group that we're looking at. So these are not big, huge retreats. They're for small, unique retreats. So what would they be, like VIP? I don't know what people call them, VIP retreats, or I don't know, there's names for them where it's a smaller group of people, even for people who are like in the tech industry, right? And they're looking for something to do with their high achievers or a thank you, or even families, right? That want to get together.
Yeah, I'll say this, I'll put this out there to the universe, but as soon as we're, of course, we're on different sides of the border. As soon as we're allowed through the border, sign us up. So as soon as we're allowed through the border, Shelly and I would love something like that. We always have the variable having a 3-month-old. We have to figure out the sitter side of things. But
well, listen, Everything's possible. If you guys want to go, come and do your thing. If you want to invite family and friends and book out the whole 5 units, we will be on the property because it's something that we want to also be involved in. I will be more than happy to watch your 3-month-old. Are you kidding me? While you go out and do day stuff? And I'm sure we could find babysitters in the area and connect, and so there's always an opportunity. And we are pet friendly, so 2 of the units will be pet friendly. So the possibilities are endless, Corey. And we would love to have you. So we skip the villages, we'll go right to the Wiki Watching.
I never thought to ask you that before, but do you still live in the villages?
No, moved. So we traveled a year and a half. Do you mind if I share the story?
No worries at all. Within that story too, do you mean that you sold the house there, or do you still have the house there?
No, moved out of the space. So about it was a year ago, Labor Day. Okay, my fiance and I had been planning to start traveling full time. This is an interesting thing. He's in the IT world. When I met him about 2 years ago, he was working 9 to 5, had to be in the office. He was like living like maybe 5 minutes from his work, and he was really tied to his schedule. And when I intended him into my life, one of the things I was really clear about in my intention was that I wanted somebody that was able to experience and explore and be able to afford to be able to live the lifestyle that I've already been living. Right. And so I met him, and almost all the boxes were checked, except he was working 9 to 5 in the tech industry. And I was like, his name is Elliot. And I was like, Elliot, listen, I said, first of all, people work in the tech industry so they could work remotely. Like, to me, that's why I would be in IT. So I could work wherever I wanted, wherever I wanted to be at the time. So in a very short amount of time after we got really clear on the intention, because he was on board, he set the intention. He came to me about a month later and he goes, whatever this intention magic is that you set, it really worked, because human resources called me in and said, anyone who's been at the company for over 3 years has unlimited PTO, paid time off. He goes, it's unheard of. He goes, but we've had this conversation. You said, let me set the intention, because I set the intention for people. Let's get really clear. Don't worry about how it's going to show up. I'll set the intention for you. And I love playing this game. So he got unlimited PTO. Unheard of. Not even a month after that, I said, well, what about this remote working? It's great that you have paid time off, but let's just go and travel. He goes to his CEO or whatever and says, what about like working remotely? He goes, well, is there a policy? And his CEO said, no, there's no policy. And he goes, but you can write one. So the CEO now gave him permission to write the policy for working remotely. All right, so fast forward. This is only like 3 or 4 months into our relationship. We buy an RV. We already set the time off for traveling with an RV, and we didn't even have one together, right? He got the paid time off. He took the 2 weeks off. We set a trip. We're going to go 10 days in an RV that we didn't even have. Not even a week later, the perfect RV shows up. And I'm shortening the story. So we travel a little bit, 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. In September, we had planned a trip. This is 2018? Wasn't this Labor Day? It was a Labor Day before. We plan a trip, and we get a phone call. And it turned out that Elliot's sister, who was a marine biologist and an environmental scientist who wrote policies all over the world for how scientists and researchers would be able to do their work and still honor, Mother Nature. Well, her and her husband were on a dive boat in the Channel Islands out in Santa Barbara, and this was the boat that caught fire. And the boat was full of 37 individuals who were making a huge impact, a global impact in our environment. And they were on this dive boat, and the trip of a lifetime, really, and they all transitioned, which feels tragic and sounds tragic, but it really propelled our trip to head out west. So in a day and a half, packed up our entire house and everything, because we had already had it rented. We thought we had a month and a half to do it. In a day and a half, got everything ready to rent out the house for the next few months and headed cross country. And I'm telling this story is because we were able to flip this tragedy and this huge, what would be loss, into something that we call celebrating life. So it's hashtag celebrate life. And it's all about recognizing that they were together on a trip of a lifetime, right? doing what they loved. Doing what they loved with who they loved. And so we traveled out west because we needed to get out west to their home and stuff in Sacramento, and Santa Barbara is where this took place. And we decided to turn this horrible, what it could have been, and it was horrible. And when you have a loss like that, there is a physical loss, but we stay connected. This entire trip, we stayed connected. Everything we did through the eyes of Adrienne, his sister, and through the eyes of Andrew, her husband. We saw the world through their eyes, because if they were still here, they would want to embrace it as well. So I'm telling you this whole story because the reason she became an environmental scientist and did the work she did is because when she was younger, they had a timeshare in Captiva, and she was inspired by the manatee. And we have now been presented by the universe or Adrienne, whoever it is, the Manatee Landing Motel. So the whole, how the world works, and when we connect the dots and we recognize that everything in and of itself, no matter what it might look like, is a miracle. So we have this huge connection to his sister still through this Manatee Landing Motel. And not only is it an inspiration for us, but we're going to create a destination for others to come and have personal experiences that they may have not had otherwise, and have it be inspired, right? And inspire others by having retreats and inviting them to come to this space. So it's a long-winded story, but there's a huge wraparound. And if we waited as opposed to created, during whatever time it was, whatever it supposedly looked like, if we said, well, we can't do that now because this happened, and we can't take 2 weeks off, we don't even have an RV to plan a trip, you just keep creating. And once you keep creating, all of these amazing things show up.
Absolutely. Well, to that point, I mean, we have a 3-month-old, so we have a child born in the chaos of what is 2020.
Right.
And, Shelley and I, I'd have to do the math backward, but I think I was 42 when Sebastian was born, and Shelley's basically a year younger than me. So she was 41, which of course is not a young age to have a child. I know it's more happening more often now, but still, they say there's more risks and the odds are lower. And so we've had 2 children above the age of 40. Of course, we thought it's not the right time, but when is a better time? When is going to be the right time? And right. So we made it.
You know what? When you decide it is.
Right. And we ultimately decided that it was. Having said that, one of the things I wanted to mention that, we talked a little bit about with Rehana is the idea of the world, maybe the balance is getting a little better. Something that I never commented on since we started doing this, or since I started doing Blue Talks Live, or since we started the book series. One of the things that's really intriguing is, for a long time, the thing that I heard from people, especially people that train and work with speakers, is it's a struggle to find female speakers. It's a struggle to get female speakers. And I don't know if you noticed the common thread, but within Blue Talks, our struggle is to get male speakers. Our struggle is to get it's the opposite.
Do we even have a guy yet? I think Felix, our next guest, is going to be the first guy of this whole week, right?
Yeah, we've had more every other time in the past, but yes, you're 100% correct. But I mean, it's just, I thought you wouldn't have seen this 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great sign about the direction we're going. When this many empowered females are raising their fists in the air and saying, it's my time. Absolutely. And that's happening. It's so happening. And, as a product of a single mother, I couldn't be happier. I mean, at the same, I'm not, I'd like to have a balance, but I'm okay with this for now, because let's be honest, as males, we've had more of the stage for a long time. So I'm okay if there's a few less of us getting the stage right now, because.
But you've created the stage too. You created, let's talk about creating, you created a platform for these women, I guess myself included, right? To be able to speak, to be able to share, to be able to inspire, right? And so thanks to you and your being brought up with your single mom, whether you're more in touch with your feminine side than you realize, or whatever it is, whoever you're attracting, right? No coincidences, just sort of, manifested interactions have created an opportunity for people to share. And so thank you for that. I know I thank you all the time, but I really mean it.
Well, and I appreciate that. And my mother deserves, just like Shelley I mentioned yesterday, my mother deserves a lot of the credit she doesn't get. There's obviously.
We should have your mom on.
Yeah, we should 100%. I think
Would
she'd
you
do
come on and chat with us?
Well, I'm sure she would. Be prepared though. She will, and you'll.
Maybe I should just chat with her alone. You know how it is when you're a parent and you're around your kids.
No. Well, the biggest thing with my mom is you'd have to be prepared that, and you'd be okay with this, but be prepared that she's going to say whatever comes to her mind.
Good.
I've shared this, I think, in the past on here. If I didn't, I openly share it everywhere because she has raised me to believe it's okay to share it because she shares it. But my mother's bipolar. And she'd be the first one to tell you, and she embraces it. Now, I say that you wouldn't know it if you met her. I'm not saying like when I say she could say anything, I don't mean like she actually, it's been sort of in check for a lot of years. But if she goes to the store and she miscounts her money, she goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm bipolar. I count my money wrong all the time." But she just makes it like a casual statement, which I think in a lot of ways takes away stigma. I think it's good that she does that. Mm-hmm. And so, but what I'm saying is that she will say whatever she feels. But I think we need that now. And, she doesn't see mental illness as a weakness.
No, and
something we need to embrace.
I have a whole other perspective of what we deem or have been diagnosed as mental illness, because we all just are being, and it's the way that she is being on this journey of being human. And I do want to share this because this is something that's really interesting, and that really has been something that has helped me settle the way that I've seen who I am in relationship to myself too. Sometimes I used to joke and go, I'm a minute manic. I could never really be truly bipolar because I don't have the attention span to stay in one state of being for a really long time. And this is like way back. I'm talking like years and years and years and years and years ago. And so everybody goes, well, I've gone through like stints of therapy or whatever, or talking to someone. I was living in Norway at the time, and I had the honor of working with this incredible woman, or she was working with me, or we were working together. And maybe that was my acupuncturist who told me this. So it's a different story. This was about schizophrenia or whatever, like I was having this conversation or being crazy or, and not knowing it. And she said to me, she goes, here's the thing. If you think that you're crazy, you're not, because people who are really like out of their mind in their state of being don't ask that question. And there was a comfort in that. It was like, okay, well, I'm here enough to know that I'm feeling this way. So there's something that I can consciously do about it, right? If I don't like how I'm feeling. So there was a comfort in that. But my acupuncturist told me this. She goes, we're talking about being bipolar or somebody with bipolar or something. And she said, everyone's bipolar. If you breathe in and you breathe out, we're bipolar. So everyone is bipolar to a degree, as long as you're breathing.
Wow. Well,
and that changes everything. So what is it that's taking your mom from one state of being to another state of being and having it be so extreme? And I love that because I work with clients who have come to me with the diagnoses of such things. And we just work on who they are. We take the diagnoses out of it and work on finding a more aligned balance for them to be able to be in, because it works better for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, you made me think when you said about bringing her on that another thing we should look at doing perhaps is bringing Shelly on at some point, because
I would love to.
She'd be all for that. So maybe we look at that for the next one.
Or we can do a Flip Your Script Friday or something like that, and all three of us can do it. We don't have to wait till a whole event.
Yeah, we might even be able to have Elijah on because she's still breastfeeding, so he'd probably be there with her. I'm talking with 3 months.
I want to meet him. So that would be awesome.
So while I think of it, because I mentioned some books, and yesterday we talked, every day we've mentioned some books for people, a lot of resources. I'm just going to share this since I mentioned the alkaline stuff earlier, just in case people want to know more about it. This is called the Acid Alkaline Food Guide. There's 2 books that I have. This is not, out of the 2, what this one's good for is it actually goes right here in the book. It shows you what it says is medium, high, and low alkaline food. But then there's another one. I don't have it in front of me. It's called the Alkaline Cure, and it's a bigger book. It actually has the tongue strips so that you can test your alkalinity. And so if somebody doubted whether or not alkalinity is even true, these strips prove it to you pretty quickly, because they tell you your alkalinity, and one day it could be like 5 and another day it could be 2. And good alkalinity is 7 point something. And I would say the average person,
or 9.5, some people would say, but yeah.
But I would say the average person is closer to 2 or 3 than they are to 9.
Mhm.
So what I'm saying is that there is something to it. And I love how the book includes the strips. The next one is one that you talk about all the time. This, I don't know, this is obviously an older version of it. This is pretty old school. I don't know if your cover looks like this.
Well, actually, I think that's the new. I don't know if that's
Oh,
the newer. I have the old. I mean, I have the original one, so
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not sure which one that is. I know there's like 3 versions of it.
Yeah, so this is, well, this one must be newer because it says more than 30 million copies sold.
Yeah, so mine is the one. You know, you talked. Who was talking about Bob Proctor? Were you talking about his book and how it was coming apart and it was bound? Maybe it was my other conference. Anyway, we're talking about Bob
it was
Proctor.
me, but I'm trying to remember who we were talking to about it with. It was somebody that was quite familiar with it. I said I was holding it in my hand.
And they were with Bob Proctor actually
Yeah.
somewhere. Oh,
Yeah.
I think it was Annie Evans.
Yes,
Yes,
I think it
he was talking about how his book was falling apart and wrapped. Well, that my version of that book, which is in my RV, which is not here right now, is like Bob Proctor's version of Think and Grow Rich. Like mine's like falling apart, it's peeling, and because I use it so much as a guide. For
Wow,
sure.
I love it.
And
then,
go ahead.
oh, I was just going to show one more, which is we talked about this one yesterday too, the 5 love languages. Remember we were talking, or 2 days ago, we were talking about parenting and relationships. Remember we had that anyway. So, and I was asking about the question about what's his name, Jack Canfield and John Gray and all their approaches, and we talked about you need to know your love language. So anyway, those are 3 books that we've talked about. So I thought I'd at least put it out there.
You're so good like that. And actually, you can go on, and I send my clients too, especially when I'm working with a family. I work with them individually, but I work with a family, like as a unit, but not as a unit. But anyway, I have each one of them, but if they're younger kids, it doesn't matter. But the parents for sure go on and figure out what their love language is. And there's a quiz. I think it's the 5lovelanguagesquiz.com or something like that. And find out what their children's love languages are as well, because that is a seed to plant before you start doing any sort of, I don't even like to call it work, coming back into alignment. It's really important to know how to communicate with yourself, how somebody's, maybe they've been showing you love all along and you didn't know it because they were just showing you the love from their language and you weren't receiving it that way. And maybe your kids, you think that you're loving your kids unconditionally, but the kids aren't feeling it because their language of love is something different. So it's always a really good place to start when you're starting the journey towards, you know, becoming this well-being, living the best version of yourself and loving yourself in whatever situation you're in. So the quiz is a great resource. And it's easy. I think it's like 10 questions or 20 questions or something like that. And you could do couples. You can do them like couples. They have a quiz for couples and individuals and families. So it's a really good one.
Yeah, I feel like something I meant to bring up with one of our guests, and I think we ran out of time, but the one challenge I feel like a lot of people run into is there's so much, and when I say so much, I mean so much good stuff you can do, but the question is, which ones do you focus on, and how do you make sure you stay true, keep doing it? Because there's so much, it's easy to go chase another shiny object. But like, for example, what I'm getting at is in the morning, okay, you could meditate, you could read, you could exercise, you could do you could do tapping, and we could go, I could extend this list forever. You could do your MEPs, and we could like list 40 things you can do in the morning.
Or you can get up and grab a cup of coffee. And if you really, can I share something? This is I was thinking about this yesterday because I think it was Maria, I can't remember her last name. She was a guest on yesterday. Martinez, and she showed us her schedule for her and her 2 kids and what she does in the morning and how she connects with source and gets her downloads. You know what? And I was thinking like, oh, maybe I should do that. But you know what I love to do? I love to get up in the morning. Now I do these foot pad things that pull out the toxins from your feet. So the first thing is I take my socks off, take off these things and, you know, whatever. But I make a cup of coffee, or if I'm celery juicing, if I'm on a celery juicing thing, I'll make a celery juice first. And sometimes I just like to do nothing. Like if I'm watching a show or I've already been binging, I just want to watch one more episode before I start the day. My fiance, he turns on cartoons, Boss Baby new episodes. He watches anime with his coffee. So it doesn't even have to be something like meditating or, you know, it could be whatever, however you just want to be when you get up. Because sometimes there's a lot of pressure to have to almost perform.
No, absolutely.
Meditation or perform yoga, or if you want to do it, like this is what we were just talking about with Elizabeth, Dr. Elizabeth Hughes, right? Is that, are you eating the cookie and loving it, right? Are you excited about going on an alkaline way of living? How do you feel when you're doing it? If you're inspired to do it, then go ahead and do it. But if you're inspired, like I am in the morning, I like that hour of checking what's going on, putting on something like that I don't have to think about on TV, and just having my coffee and allowing myself to be in that space. And then, whatever, maybe I'll fold laundry while I'm doing it, or just something like that for that morning space without feeling like I have to do something. That works best for me. And it's not always the same thing.
No, absolutely. And so here, and I agree with that completely. Here's the challenge I think people run into. You just said a key thing. It's whatever calls out to you. But what if you don't know what calls out to you? So then all of a sudden there's 50.
Well, that's a whole other topic of conversation.
No, what I mean is that there's 50 options because you're hearing all these amazing people who have these things that work great for them, and you're hearing them going, well, what, should I try that one? Should I try that one? What if I try that one?
Okay, well, there's a key right now. Should. If you think you should do something, put it on the list of things that you'll do when you're inspired. If the first thing that comes to mind is, should I do this? It's not the right choice.
But here's what I'm getting at. If somebody's listening to us for a week and every single thing they hear, oh, should I try that? Oh, should I try that? But nothing calls out to them.
Or I'm inspired.
Yeah, but what if that's what I'm saying? What if they don't know what the thing that inspires them, and they don't get inspired by any of the things, but yet they feel like I should take some step towards improving myself? What I'm saying is, this what I'm trying to get at. How do you know which source to listen to? Because like if I go to you, right, you're going to give me solutions that have worked for you, or you've seen work clients, or work for me. No, listen, no, hear me out on this. Or work for me based on what calls to me, or your intuition says, or my intuition says. But you're going to either give me a solution or tell me what do I feel. But one way or another, you're going to guide me down a path. But then if I go to Dr. Elizabeth Hughes, she's going to guide me down a path. If I go to my chiropractic.
But wait, I just have to say one thing. That's where I probably differ from any coach or guide, is that I never guide anyone down their path. What I do is I help an individual recognize how to touch base with what resonates with them. And that's frustrating for some of my clients, but I will never guide anyone down a path. What I do is I create the space and help them create their own internal space to be able to connect with what resonates with them, and I hold the space for them to give themselves permission to do it, to try it.
No, and that's perfect. So let's take you off the table, though. So now they have.
Fine. I just want to be clear. I just want to be clear on how I present, because it's about creating the space for somebody to find their own freedom.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's not a comfortable question, because I am aiming to provide solutions for people, but I'm also conscious of the fact that I can chase down a lot of rabbits. And so, the question becomes, if they're hearing these great things from us, like, for example, Dr. Porter, and they go, that sounds awesome, that I could get into a quicker meditation. But then the next person comes on and says, what you need to do is walk in nature and get your feet grounded. And they go, oh, I should try that. That sounds awesome. And let's say they all call to them. The question I'm always driving at, and it's hard to get an answer for this, is where do they start?
Okay.
What do they try?
All right. I have an idea. Are you ready? And it's a really simple solution. It's something that I share with my clients when they have this is what I need to do list, right? I'm like, listen, you take a piece of paper, really simple. You fold it in half. Well, there's already a line here, okay? On the right side, on the left side, right? You make a list of all of the options that you have, every single thing, and keep adding to it. Keep adding to the options, okay? And on the other side, on the right side, take the top 3 that call out to you. And this is really good if you have a to-do list that you're feeling pressure that I have to do everything. You take the top 3 things that you think that you need to get done or whatever, so you can apply it both ways. Take the 3 things that seem the most interesting and you're most inspired to try, and then try those 3 things. When you're finished trying those 3 things, only then do you add 3 more things.
Now, how long do you get them to try it for? To decide.
However long they want to try it. If they're still inspired, keep doing it. If it's something you're not inspired for, then get another piece of paper, put it on the list, tried, not inspired. On the other side, tried and I am inspired. And go through it, and then keep doing what inspires you. The thing is that we try to come up with these solutions. We're all so solution oriented. When I work with somebody, it's not about finding a solution. It's creating the space to be able to explore all of these opportunities and options that you're inspired to try. It's about dissolving this idea that you have to do something in order to be able to give yourself permission then to feel and be a certain way. So it's, instead of finding solutions, it's about creating this, getting rid of or pulling the weeds, right? Or the blocks that are holding you from feeling the freedom and the relief and the okayness enough to explore and start creating instead of waiting, right? The space to create. So just start, take a list of all the things that seem really cool and awesome. And like honestly, with Maria's like list of, you know, everything that she does and schedules and stuff, I had 1 second where I was like, maybe I should. And as soon as the should popped into my head, I'm like, that's just not me. I love how grounded she is. I can feel how like that works for her personality and for her family. I'm sure her kids are really flourishing with her, you know, approach to parenting. But it isn't me. Like the pressure to have to do that, I could already feel in my body. That is not a place that I'm going to be creating from. Right?
I love it. Well,
so I just feel like we make a really big, hairy deal about a lot of things, and it's exactly what Elizabeth's talking about, is if we really want to heal, it's about trusting, knowing, believing that it's okay to just figure it out and as you go without having to do a certain thing or have a certain routine or stick to something.
Well, and I think it goes back to the personalized side of it, though, because the key thing you said is it wasn't for you, but that doesn't mean, it's, like you said, it's not for somebody else. Like for me, I hate, now and I know our guest is backstage now, so we're going to bring him on right away, but I hate, and I don't, you know me, you probably never heard me use that word. So
strong adverse reaction to.
Yeah, so which is cool. That's okay. Well, and hate's it's probably too strong a word. It's almost like saying this is the awesomest thing that's ever happened. People say it for everything now, so it's not even strong as hate. So let's say I have a distinct like for systems and writing stuff down. If these are the 3 things I want to do today and all that stuff. However, I feel better when I do it. I feel more accomplished. I 100% get more done. If I don't write it, it doesn't get done, period. And I like myself better when I do it, but I hate doing it, which is a weird dichotomy.
Well, what if we just said maybe the pressure that's attached to having to do it is something that you have an issue with? Because what if you just could do it without feeling like you have to? Wouldn't that feel better?
Well, and here's the challenge. I don't feel I have to. I just don't do it. And when I don't do it, the stuff doesn't get done. And then whenever I go, you know what, I need to pull out my bootstraps and do it, then I'm way, way, way more productive. And I like that way more after the fact. I don't like it while I'm doing it, like writing the list, but I like striking the stuff off. I like actually doing it. So I've noticed that I work better with a list, but I just don't like the process of having a list.
So personally, I don't make lists. Sometimes I'll put something in my calendar or I'll jot down a note of inspiration to do. But when I get an inspired thought or an action, what I do is I just take action right away because I'm that inspired. Like I'm like, oh wow, and then I create from that place. And sometimes I'll let it be, and then things will show up around it because that intention was set, and I didn't put too much pressure on it, because that's sometimes also you get out of frequency, out of alignment with the thing, because now it's like, instead of inspired, I feel like now I have to make something happen, and that's almost pulling you away from, or pulls me away from it.
Yeah, and this goes back to the personalized situation too, because we have to look and say what their life looks like. For example, somebody that's working for somebody else, like Elliot was, and who maybe is in a situation where they feel, I'm going to use the word they feel, because it's the words they feel right now, they can't leave that. Maybe they're saying, well, I have 5 children and my wife wants to stay here and I'm happy in this place, but I'm not a huge fan of working for somebody else, but that's where I'm at right now. And that's where they're at. Well, they might not be able to just do things as they want, because they might have obligations where they have to do certain things. Or like if their daughter needs to get somewhere, like they have 5 kids and 4 of them are in soccer and everything else, they might have to drive them there or the kid doesn't get there. And they complicate in that thing. So I think it's always personalized, because
absolutely, but
like
it's
you and I,
possible.
you and I are in a situation where we can kind of just go with the flow and what inspires us and what speaks to us right now. Not everybody has that opportunity.
But
So,
you created that choice. You
Yeah,
made the choice and you created the platform for it. So we're a lot of times I find in conversations with not just clients, but just in general, that we there are many reasons why we shouldn't do something or couldn't do something or feel like we can't do something. But there are just as many reasons that we can. If we take if we take the expectation of how it's going to show up, or the loss that we feel that we might have, that fear of loss, I'm going to lose my house, I'm going to lose my money, I'm not going to have enough of this and that. If we knew without a shadow of a doubt, if we followed our inspired thought that everything would show up to support that, we would probably be making very different choices. But there's a fear that we're going to lose and not have enough and fall into a situation that's maybe worse. That's the holdback. But if we knew, and I'm planting the seed for everyone, I'm letting you know that when you actually follow that inspiration, everything will show up for you, and it'll be a much more joyful journey.
Well, that was I'm going to bring on our guest, but that was a full circle to yesterday when we talked, or yesterday or the day before when we talked about fear and how I said I believe it's more of a fear of the unknown. And you just said the unknown. If I do this, I could lose my house. I could lose this. That's the unknown that the person doesn't know. So let's circle that back. Let's table that for a sec, because I want to bring on our guest, because I know he's here backstage waiting and I want to give him maximum time. But I also have a hard stop at our normal stop time today. So let's bring Felix on. Felix, can you hear us okay?
Yeah, well, I can hear you absolutely fine. Can you hear me as well?
100%.
Yes.
Excellent.
Hey, how
Perfect.
are you, Felix?
I'm doing great.
Yourselves, or say hello to each other.
Hello, each other.
Hi, how are you doing? Is it Elise? How do you pronounce your name, by the way?
Corey calls me Elise. It's Elise or
Elise? Okay,
yes.
So Elise. Okay, yes. It's a pleasure to meet you, Elise.
Same here.
Absolutely.
I like your background. Dream without fear.
Thanks.
There you go. Hello.
Yeah, that segues directly right into your conversation. So, it's something that it's always good to have reminders, right? So that's how the brain works. And then every time you're reminded about something, that's where you're more prompted to take action. So everybody has their own set of fears and whatnot, but that shouldn't let anyone hold back their potential.
Right.
Love it. So Felix, having said that, where we usually like to start, and I feel it's a good soft way to bring somebody onto the show, rather than me, and I always say this, rather than me reading a bio off the screen, we always get the guests to tell us a little bit about themselves. And
sure.
Some people say, how deep do you want me to go? You never have to worry. It's up to you, because we're going to dive a bit deeper anyway and get further. But can you tell us a little bit about yourself for those viewers and listeners who may be discovering you for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born and raised in Edmonton, Alberta. Right now is winter cold outside. So, we'd like to get some more sunny weather here, but we'll probably have to wait a couple of months. But the whole background, if, all three of us were to sit down together and have this conversation, and we're to revisit this conversation, let's say 20 years ago, I highly doubt that I would see myself in this position right here, especially in the business world. Growing up, I was more introverted, more shy, especially in the first, kindergarten through the first, couple grades. And then, after a while, just kind of got used to meeting new kids, and then, building friendships and relationships, and kind of like breaking out of that shell. And ironically, a lot of that transitioning would happen also in the business world too, as well. So growing up, in terms of my educational background, it was heavily into the sciences. So ironically, right now I have the neuromarketing company, Happy Buying Brain, and that's where the neuro part comes from. But looking back, who would have knew that, it would lead to where we are today? And that's the beauty of kind of like everybody's journey, right? Because there's a lot of twists, turns, surprises, and so forth. And, you meet a lot of great people along the way that will influence your path to, where you're at today. So, that would be one of the reasons that will resurface later in the journey as I explain the story. So, it's coming from a background where, a lot of the family members come from the medical field, for example. So that was the initial aspiration, was to, of course, finish school and then, become some sort of profession within the field of, let's say, medicine or optometry, for example, right? So a lot of that was just pretty much, just placing your face in the books the entire time. And, instead of 12 hours of how we do business right now, it'd be just 12 hours of this book, this grinding out the books, right? So, a lot of the skills in terms of the conversation side didn't take place during that time. So it's more growing up was more towards the bookworm side of things. So it was a lot of theory, but not so much of the practical side. And of course, going into post-secondary was, that's where a lot of the attention was put towards, was obviously the biological sciences and also psychology, which would later emerge in the current field of neuromarketing right now, which is, what we're doing at the current moment, but we didn't know that at the time. So we met a friend, and everything kind of took a big twist after that. So he was the one who introduced, myself and a couple others that were close to him to the world of business, mainly through self-employment opportunities, and they involved, like finances, investments, real estate, and that sort of industry. So coming into that, it was a big wake-up call, because prior to that, in terms of the number of interactions where you're really going out there and meeting new people to build relationships for, let's say, the business and to grow the brand, for example, was non-existent when you're looking to get into the field of medicine. It was more, you get the marks, you write a couple exams, you pass it, and then you go and you finish your X amount of years, and then you come out and you're in the workforce. So it was a big coming out there, and then having every day to at first force yourself to talk to people, because that's the part that we're talking about. And I know that Corey and Elise, you're talking about the fear part. So imagine coming from a background where you're not familiar with talking to people at all, and now making that big transition to the other side where every day, that's something that you have to do, right? Is to interact with people, get to know them on a personal level as well, and also on a professional level. So that took, that was quite challenging, but at the same time, I had a lot of support, a lot of great people to surround and to learn from during that time. So, spent a couple of years in the self-employment. It really opened the eyes in terms of transitioning out of the theory side of things, like when you're just learning things from books. Now, how does it translate into the real world? And of course, as we know in business, there's a lot of differences in terms of what you read in the book versus what really goes on in terms of the real life aspect of things. So, that was probably the big revelation coming from, more of the education or academic side of things, and then into the business side. And then after that, we got more involved in about 2010, the tech field, spent nearly a decade there, build anything from social networks to, partnering up with influencers that have 1 million plus followers, to bring their emoji apps to, let's say, to the App Store, to the Android store, for example, and, built games as well. So we got in kind of at the right time in 2010. It's not nowhere sophisticated as today. Back then, everybody was just known as for like the games, right? But today, you could actually look at who's ringing your doorbell, for example, and have a camera where you could peek out to make sure that the person is somebody that you're familiar with. So, it's gone a long way from where it was. And what we saw leading up probably for the last 2 years is, we're part of the 2010 mobile and iPhone and Android tech revolution. And now what we see is that we're actually at a cusp of another technological revolution. And right now, what that involves is virtual reality, augmented reality. So when we looked at what the core of a lot of these innovations were, it was neuroscience. So what ends up happening is whenever you have, a trend that becomes popularized, you also have other concepts that are associated with it also become popularized as well, and they become more mainstream. So we want to take the concept of neuroscience and also now apply it to the world of business, marketing, and sales. So that's why we see such a huge opportunity today for it, because all this stuff is on the verge of becoming mainstream. And ironically, the pandemic has really helped us, because everybody now, as we see this big shift from more the brick and mortar and physical stores into the online space, now, a lot of companies are really, they have to fast forward their plans to, really digitize their business. So just coming out of, the tech realm at that time, we had that ability to actually empower the companies that we work with to really help facilitate them and, allow them to smoothly transition into what we have today, which is more the online and digital world, right? Due to everything that's happening in across the globe right now.
So, it's interesting, Felix. I'm going to mention this one quick thing, and then
Sure.
I can jump in with a question. But I think
Absolutely.
I do have a question too.
Okay, so mine's
Perfect.
not a quick question, but something you just said, that it's funny how I'm big on synchronicity, so I'm just calling it synchronicity, because I tell people the reason I think I see a lot of them is because I make note when I see them. And so last night it's a weird comparison, but last night I was at Walmart, and I saw they have the security cameras. Because what made me think of this when you said, we've gone to the point where you could look outside the door and say, I don't recognize that person. And so I was at Walmart, and I saw they had the security things, and they had a $50 and $100 camera that you can put up outside or in your house, and it shows a widescreen in your house. And for the last little bit, I've been struggling in the office here. How can I have, if I want to speak to an audience like I'm on a stage, what's the easiest way to capture a camera? And every way I looked at it was just a pain, because you can't put the camera out far enough to get my whole body. And then I saw this thing, I saw the picture at Walmart, and it's a widescreen. I'm like, I could just buy that $50 or $100 camera, put it up in the top of the corner, and film it down to myself, and that could be me.
Capture everything.
Yeah. And anyway, so I'm going with the synchronicity, because I'm like, should I do that? And then you just brought up the fact that we could see people outside. So there's an example of, it could be just a coincidence, but the fact that you said it tells me that I need to go buy that camera.
You always return it if it doesn't work. It's Walmart.
Yeah, you have the return policy, so your risks of loss, like how we, both Lisa and Corey, you're talking about, that becomes mitigated, right? So that's almost like a guarantee where you have nothing to lose.
Thought, Corey, that take action on the inspired thought.
I agree. I think that's a fabulous thought.
I have to, but I mean, the fact that I have all this camera gear, I probably have about $8,000 worth of camera gear, and that'll probably be the easiest way to do it. So I just think that's funny. But anyway,
that is awesome. I'm glad that came up though, because that's
I gotta figure out a way to
conversation.
Do it so the sound quality is just like it should be. But I'll worry about that later.
Probably wireless. I'm pretty sure they would have some wireless attachment to it that would be able to send the signal through clearly.
Listen, you might be onto something really big here, Corey.
Let
us know how it goes. These virtual stages may be game changing right now.
Absolutely. I'm just gonna put that over in here for a second. And Lisa, I think you said you had a question, so I'll let you jump in. I had one, but I want you to jump in first.
Well, I'm really curious. So there's a lot of transitions that you've had on your journey to get you where you are. So the clients that you're working with now, first of all, I love Happy Buying Brain. I mean,
thank you.
I mean, I think that says everything. When we're happy and when we're inspired is when we take action to do whatever it is that we're going to do, and buying is included, right?
Yeah.
So what inspires us, and this, I've had a journey as well, and part of, I would say, a thread that runs through everything that I do is brand architecture. Like, I love the concept of concept execution and distribution when you start a concept and a brand, and I love creating the brand and the logo and the feel and the vibe. Maybe the growing of it, like architects don't build their own houses, so I'm not the best at building the actual brand once it's created, but it fascinates me. What is it that grows a company? Like what are those key elements? And it has everything to do with neuroscience. It has everything to do with that inspired, happy part of the brain that's tapped into by the story, by the company, by the product, by the thing, how it's presented, right?
Right.
So right now, what industry are you focused on? A specific industry that you're bringing into this arena? Are you medical still, or is it totally different?
It's actually, we've touched on, because right now, there's a study that came out that due to what's happening around with the whole pandemic, it's pretty much accelerated plans to digitize business by up to 6 years. So, if you look at industries that's across the globe, for example, you won't be able to really pick one. It's even ones that have been in there for a long time are still looking for ways to connect with their audience. So there's either two problems. Either they don't have online presence, or the other thing is, if they do have an online presence, then how do they connect with today's new customer, so to speak, due to everything else that's happening. So, like a lot of industries, they, regardless of whether they had a digital presence or not at that time, they're still faced with those two main challenges. So, that's something that's very important, like how you said, with the branding and so forth, and what's the core messaging. So that'd be very important, let's say, for a company that already has a strong online presence. Then how do they now connect with today's, socially conscious consumer? So they have that challenge now. So that's something that we help companies work with as well. And then obviously, if they do have zero digital presence, then then you're talking about building everything up from the ground up. And a lot of them are, a lot of the companies are realizing that they have to be where their customers are, right? And due to like social distancing and everything, that's something that allows them to get involved in the conversation, when before, they would rely on other systems and other referral sources to get the word out, that are really no longer as effective today as they once were in the past.
Right. So your solution, like basically you provide the solutions in two categories for anyone who's looking for those solutions. So it doesn't, it's not specific to an industry, it's specific to a need.
Exactly. So that's why when we looked at things, we didn't want to focus too much in one particular industry. So we want to look at things where we knew that a lot of industries would be disrupted based on everything that's happened. We see it all over the place. Companies, they flourish, companies that do not flourish. So they're looking for different solutions. But what we saw was that what we offer was that, we could find the companies that would need the most help, regardless of what their industry is. So that's how you keep a kind of like an open portfolio on the clients that you work with. Because let's say that one industry, like let's say right now, the restaurant industry is really heavily affected. So let's say that if your core business revolved around, let's say, clients within that industry, like that type of relationship would look different right now due to, all the different challenges that they're working with, right? So that might be tough for a lot of businesses to flourish in that environment. So we want to be cognizant. We saw this in the tech world, that technology, the greatest use is, of course, the ability to affect a lot of people at one time. So we want to take that mentality so that we can apply our philosophy to the clients that we work with, regardless of the industry, and just identifying what are their true, like what really gives them anxiety at night and they can't sleep.
Well, that's interesting that you picked the restaurant industry, because one of the areas of my career was always focused on consulting from back of the house to front of the house. I think the restaurant industry has been an industry that has had challenges anyway, because I think people start a restaurant, they don't really recognize they're starting a business that happens to be a restaurant. Like, so there's a different mentality of individuals normally that go into and start a business, and it happens to be mobile, like a mobile food in the mobile food industry, or even the restaurant industry. So how would you tackle that? I mean, that's like fascinating to me right now, because what do you do if it is a restaurant business?
Well, that all depends. Like right now, it depends. There's really no clear-cut solution to it, because what's happening is there's so many changes that are happening. So the only thing to do is you have to be just resilient and flexible, right? Because at the end of the day, there's always policies that come to place. And right now they're switching, depending on what how the pandemic is going. Then it's best to advise them to, just keep an open mind in terms of how they could be nimble and then make the changes. And then with that, then we would look at the current situation and see what would be the proper thing to implement that time in order to, boost their ROI. But for that question, because right now we're living in a time where nobody has lived through such a time before,
right?
Then it's always, the companies that are able to adopt the mindset where they have flexibility in their approach to adjusting, for example, always have the highest probability to persevere and to come out on top, right? Like we've seen that with every industry, especially in technology. Nothing changes faster than technology, and we saw that especially with mobile phones. At one time, BlackBerry was the dominant player, and then iPhone and Android just took over in the blink of an eye. So that just tells how quickly things can change in the restaurant business, what's happening there, and many other, not just the restaurant business, but many other industries are definitely affected, and you have to just kind of help them work through those challenges at the time. But there's no clear-cut solution, because it becomes a lot more personalized. Like how we talked about, you kind of have to see, even though they're in that particular industry, what specific challenges that are giving them the most problems right now that needs to be solved in order to increase their chances that they'll be able to come up on top.
Well, I think it ties into the creating and the waiting, right? Or if you're waiting for the climate to change, then you're going to be awaiting, and probably they were in that mindset before this happened anyway.
Right.
And then you have the creators who are, creating new signature dishes and being more creative with cuisine and how they're presenting, food and the environment and the experience. So I mean, we can really translate it into business as well. Have you been, waiting for something to happen or creating the something?
Exactly. So it's better to be proactive than just to wait around, because at least you would have some, or the person would feel some sense of control. And I think that's when, there's a part of the brain that that's involved in like the fight or flight, which is your primal brain. So if that's in a state of hyperactivity, which in a lot of individuals right now across the globe, it certainly is. There's a lot of, fear, anxiety, uncertainty. So it makes the logical part where the brain just go offline. So, that's in terms of now the critical thinking skills and analyzing situations, then a lot of those skills are unfortunately not available at that particular time. So it's always good to keep the mindset that, it's this flexibility and this analyzing things step by step to find the best solutions at the time. And going back to your restaurant example, there's a restaurant that, and I'm pretty sure other restaurants are doing this too, but instead of, let's say, selling the just offering the dishes, for example, they knew at that time, like baked goods were very, very popular. People were staying at home, so they need to find things to do. So they're baking, whatever it is, cookies, muffins, bread. And, it became a big shortage of supply when it came to flour, for example. So, so you had businesses now that, let's say, that would use their flour to make, whatever it is, pizza or whatever it is. So they would actually now sell individual components of that particular meal and make it available to their customers, for example. So that's just a way, So that's just a way of being, creative and just tapping into our, their inner genius, so to speak. So they're almost slicing, dicing packages instead of just, thinking that they would always have to sell the full item that's on their menu.
I love it.
So I wanted to ask you about this, Felix. There's a couple of things.
Sure.
One of them, I'll mention one thing, and then I want to ask you something on your website. So
Sure.
First of all, I'll mention something to validate what you just said, which is that years ago, we had a small business publication. We ran it for about 6 years, monthly.
Right.
And we interviewed people all the time. So I decided to do, when the 2008 quote unquote recession happened, I decided to go out and interview people, business owners. And what I wanted to figure out is where their mindset was at when it first started. And so here's what I found. It's just like an interesting study that I found. This goes back to your point and even Elise's point about continuing to be a creator. What I found is the people that had already been thriving regardless of the economy continued to thrive by the end of the recession. Yeah. Here's the one thing they had in common. When I asked the question about how are you reacting to what's going on in the economy, and I specifically used the word reacting because they weren't responding, they were reacting. And the people that struggled said, we decide to stop spending. We decide to let go of staff, to go down to a smaller staff. Long and short of it is they were reacting and acting in a different way than they did to grow the company in the first place. Now, the people that survived and thrived, interestingly enough, you might think they said, well, we're going to go all in, we're going to spend more money. No, what they did is they acted as if there was no recession. So comments I would get is, what recession? We're just not participating. And so my point of this is, what's interesting is some of the people that built this great company when the economy was strong changed the way they acted to build that great company. And then all of a sudden they're wondering why they went into business. Well, you're not doing the things that you had to do to build this great company in the first place. And so to your point, I find the people that, we can call it stay the course, but the people that said, I'm just going to operate as if the recession doesn't exist, I found it, and we're talking like an overriding percentage, like 90% of them were still going after the recession versus the other scenario, it was like 30%. And a lot of these bricks and mortar business that started just before went into business within a year. And those are the ones that told me, oh, we're going to have to change everything. We're stopping dealing with this supplier. We're doing this differently. And they were doing that, by the way, before they were even affected by it. They were reading the newspaper and going, we're going to react because we're supposed to. So I just wanted to comment on what you said. But the second thing on your website is you mentioned that basically consumers choose to buy what they choose to buy. Those factors that influence it are ones that they're not even aware of themselves, meaning the person that's buying. Right. And you mentioned the point that that means if you're marketing based on your customer's logical brain, you're probably losing 95% of your customers because 95% of people don't buy with logic. And I think the thing. There's a great quote we had in sales for years. And the quote was, customers buy with emotion and then justify with logic. So they
Right.
buy emotionally, and then they go, "Oh, this is why I made that decision. I'm going to logically buy it now." So it seems to be what you're saying there. So the question of all that is, when it comes to the neuro side of things, you're outside of, and I mean, obviously the answer would be to work with somebody like you. But let's say they're just starting this process.
Right.
What can they do to start understanding that, that what that neurological thing is that's making their specific customers buy? Is there anything they can do? Like, for instance, I know with people that want to come into the Blue Talk ecosystem,
Right.
a lot of times what they tell me, the reason they decide to come within the system is because they saw pictures of other people, or they watched our Blue Talk virtual event. So they could already visualize themselves emotionally in the place, rather than them saying this is a good logical business decision. So my question is, how can we, again, I know the answer is to work with you, but if we're not there yet, how can we actually take some steps towards understanding what's making our customers buy?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's just the way to look at it is like, how do we learn anything when we look at it? It's something that's brand new, for example. The first thing we do is there's always Google. There's always articles on on the internet, for example. There's communities out there. So in addition to, let's say, working with somebody like myself and a neuromarketing company, in those communities, there's also people who share very insightful thoughts as well on different perspectives when it comes to consumer behavior and how and their relationships with businesses. And also there's a lot, like, there's courses that are out there, so that's something that a resource that a lot of people could use as well. There's also books, so everybody that we probably know that are entrepreneurs when it comes to books, we just consume them like it's breakfast, right? So that those are probably the three main spots or points to start. So just see it, instead of just looking at it and being like, well, this thing seems so esoteric, but look at it from the point of view, it's like, okay, if I was interested in learning any subject, how would I go about doing it? And then when you look at the pathways, they're very similar. So this is the same logic and the same type of thinking that we apply when we look at the industries, for example. So that's why it's very kind of like broad type of flexible thinking. So we look at it and be like, okay, like, let's look at this industry, for example. What are some of the things that are keeping up the business owners at nighttime that they need to get fixed right away? So you're just plugging in what's, you're just putting a variable X and you're just replacing it. So, we grew up with a lot of math in our household. So maybe that's where the algebra kind of comes in and factors in today's business world. But it's the same idea of kind of like leveraging those same type of thought processes into now different areas. Even though at first they may look unfamiliar, but now, there's a lot of similarities in terms of how they would be approached as well.
Do you have because you're talking about like Googling articles, that kind of thing. I was just on your site as well, and I see that you have a blog, but do you have like a Facebook group or something that people could like join, and like some companies do lives every once in a while, like just kind of get a sense of what you're doing, or to gather more information, YouTube channel, I don't know, something like that?
Yeah, I was actually going to get around to that. So it was the blog, and then the podcast. I just wanted something.
Podcast. There you go.
Yeah, there's podcasts as well. So I know Corey. We joined each other on a podcast back in, I think, February. So this is before everything had happened. So the conversation that we had back in February is radically different than what it is that we're having today with the three of us. So podcasts are also a great resource to learn as well. But from personal experience, I think the best way is always to connect with people, let's say on LinkedIn, or have the ability to talk with them in person, or some sort of medium, because that's nothing beats or facilitates learning faster than the ability to have a conversation with somebody. So that always certainly has the most benefits when it comes to learning any type of subject or discipline.
I think too, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Felix, because you would have more insight into this than me. But if I just look at it from a point of view of my business's behavior, my clients, it actually seems like what happened was, for a little stall, and I'm talking like maybe March and half of April, like whenever it first was announced as a pandemic, maybe all of April. I even go and say maybe it was 2 months. I found people were really cautious in making decisions, like if they were, wherever that was, whatever part of my business. Let's say they want to sign up for our TEDx program. They're really cautious for about 2 months. And then what's really interesting is that they kind of went right back to who they were before that. So what I mean by that is they were buying with emotion again. So over about 2 months, it was like, I'm going to halt because of logic.
Yeah.
And then once maybe they got used to this pattern that we're in a new normal, I found that those same people, even some, by the way, who halted in March, came to me on their own and said, okay, I want in.
Yeah.
But then I'd say, well, what made you change your mind? Well, I'd like to be, whatever this is, like, I want to get on a TEDx stage, even if it's virtual. But I don't know if you found that, but it seemed like that. And this is like, as we know, since the beginning of time, people have been buying with emotion. So would you agree that even in times like that, obviously if people have less money, they're going to be conscious of their decision. But would you agree that this is something that fundamentally is probably going to exist forever, that people are going to buy with emotion?
Well, that's actually how we're designed, ironically. So there's something called bottom-up processing. So a lot of people, the common thinking is, okay, well, you hear something or you watch something, and then that information, this goes directly to your cortex, which is your logical or rational part of the brain. But there's also another pathway, and it's called the bottom-up processing, because it actually goes through your primal brain first. And your primal brain, the reason why it does that, because the brain as a whole has really three main functions, right? It wants information that's fast, it's energy efficient, and it's there for threat detection. Because back in our ancestral days, thinking was not a premium. It was more, if you're able to identify a predator, it's much more better to have your muscles and to have your glucose and your a lot of your resources going into your muscles so that you could run away from that predator, right? So so that's why right now we're still guided by a lot of these primitive instincts or the primal brain. So the primal brain is, once again, it's usually built of two parts. So you have, at the very base, you have like the reptilian brain, which is fast, automatic, reflexive, and that deals with more of the fight or flight. So that deals, gets the body prepared to engage in any type of what it feels to be a danger or threatening situation. And then what sits on top of that is your midbrain. So that deals more with your emotions and your social situation. So that, it would be everything that we talked about, the fear, the happiness, any level of uncertainty, for example. And also it assesses people in terms of status as well. So that's why you have the social situation in terms of hierarchy. And because, if you're following a leader, you want he or she to, give you advice or guidance that's going to increase the chances of your survival and reproductive success. So that's why being able to, that part of the brain being able to assess, is this information credible, is very, very important to, the livelihood of people in general. And then once it passes that primitive part of the brain, and then it gets passed on to the logical part of the brain, where it gets, the information gets assessed based on, let's say, facts, logic, figures, numbers, and all the other more rational aspects of the discussion. So, if somebody's coming in and all of a sudden their presentation is this full of numbers and statistics, then that's something they're going to be fighting an uphill battle unless they already have that brand or that credibility that they can leverage into that conversation. So, but even then, it's always important to restate, like, a lot of those measures that make people feel safe, because that's what the primal brain is designed for, is to keep us safe. And going back to your conversation earlier with fear and the fear of loss and let's say the fear of rejection, that's where it stems from, even though logically we should be doing it and it will get us further ahead in life. But that fear, it really debilitates a lot of people in terms of, taking that first step even to, help them get to where they want. So it's a matter of understanding, the relationship between the primal brain and the logical part of the brain, and like how they work together and how, people can make it work for them too.
I'm listening to what you're saying, Felix, and you think about, like, you go to talk about Walmart. We use Walmart. Not that we're plugging Walmart, but or any store, and they have the right, what do they call that section where they have the that impulse purchase or whatever.
Oh, is it right next to you?
Yeah, like right next to the cash register. And companies pay a lot of money to be there. I mean, it's specifically positioned because it's an inspired action.
Right.
You pick it up, you buy it, you put it, it's at the register already, and you bought it. A lot of times, if you pick something up and you're all the way on the other side of the store, all of a sudden that logical part of the brain goes, maybe I don't need it. Like, how many times have you done that? Like, where you were going to get something, you really liked it, and by the time you got to the register, you're like, I really don't need this, and you asked the cashier to put it back.
Right.
I mean, I hear this a lot. Sales isn't really my thing. People tell me, oh, you're a great salesperson. Closing isn't my thing, because it's exactly what you're talking about. When somebody's excited and inspired, they want to buy it. And if they walk away and say, let me think about it, I don't know what the percentage is, but I would probably say it's a very high percentage of people that don't come back and purchase once they've had time to think about it, especially if it's a high ticket item.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree? I mean, I don't know the statistics for it, but I hear it a lot because I interview a lot of people. A lot of people talk about, the different steps to sales and, relationships. It's heart, head, hand, heart. Like there's all these systems. And it's because we do purchase with that inspired, happy brain. But if we have time to sit back and think, the logical part kicks in and goes, might not be such a good idea right now.
Exactly.
And I don't think you can afford it. You don't deserve it. It's not worth it. And then, the sale's not made, or you don't make that purchase.
Right. So the one thing that we learned, like going back to what Corey had mentioned, was, people buy with their emotions and then justify with their logic. So that's why especially let's say that, you're having a conversation with somebody and then they step back for a second, or maybe there's an interruption that happens that within, it could be 10, 15 seconds. But during those 10, 15 seconds now, the emotional connection within the conversation has been disrupted, right? So one of the things, of course, that makes someone who's really effective in terms of communication is now how did they go back, and instead of just carrying forward as though nothing happened, now they have to go back and kind of and actually make sure that the emotional connection is is there again in order to move the conversation along where it would increase the chances of, let's say, a sale or a conversion. Mm-hmm. So just going back to like the high ticket sales situation. So yes, once and this extends beyond this high ticket sales, but also pretty much any type of products or that you're looking or service that is looking to be that consumers are looking to buy. If that emotional attachment's there, if it's missing, then it's very difficult, just based on the logic, to convince them that this is something that they want to buy. So certainly that emotional component is absolutely crucial as well to to consumers' buying decisions, because they need to see, or they need to feel, how does this service or product will enhance their life in whatever capacity it is at that time. Is it to clear boredom? Is it to make so that they could go out and go out and have fun and look great, like all that stuff factors into the decision making.
It makes me think of you go to the events like Brendan Burchard's event, mm-hmm. where he has what is it called, why is it jumped out of my head? But he has a high performance academy, and so I went to his I've been to like 3 of his events, and Brendan, I'm just using him as the example, but you can go Tony Robbins, you can list any of the high performing top level speakers, and this goes back to what you're asking about, Elise. There's a reason why they layer everything on, wanting you to buy before you leave. They don't say, I've only seen like a small, like less than 5% that have ever said, take the night to think about it. No, they're wanting you to decide right now.
Like a click funnel. They start. They kind of bring you in, and then you're in, and then you want more, and then there's a mm-hmm. whole. I love that there's a neuroscience. I never really thought about wording it that way, but that's what it's. That's all it is, really.
Yeah, and the thing about, like, for example, the ClickFunnels, if you go to that example, they're doing all that because they know the odds of them they have to work just as hard to get you back into the funnel again for that second or third item,
right?
Rather than having you right there when you've already gave them your credit card for a tiny. And there's a reason they do that. Buy our free shipping, get our book, and you only pay free shipping, so it's only $8. But they want your credit card, and I don't mean they want your number, like they have your number. I just mean they know that if you take out the credit card once, now in your mind you're already spending on your credit card. It's easier. And
how do you feel about ClickFunnels, Felix? Is that something that you guys look at, or?
I think it's effective. I think depending on what the goals are in the company and the industry, I think if they're looking to acquire leads and they feel that using ClickFunnels is something that works for them, then it's something that's definitely worth a shot and could be very, very effective for them. So it all depends on what they're looking to achieve, and then from there on, just kind of testing out the funnel and seeing what offers work and what the copy is, and what the upsells are, and then from there on, like how you mentioned, if if you're able to get somebody's credit card, and this is something that Apple knows very well, the very moment you get an iPhone, for example, it already asks you for your credit card information, even though you're not in the App Store making any in-app purchases. So they just know that removes the barrier to a purchase, because that gives people the biggest pain, is to take out that credit card and to punch those numbers into, let's say, their their mobile phone or on the internet. So if you could remove that pain right from the start, then your chances of let's say making future sales goes up dramatically. Just like how Corey mentioned that, if you get someone to buy the book that's free shipping, for example, then they're more likely to be open to the other offers that come afterwards.
Well, and just to go to that thing you said, I don't know if you know this either, Elise, but to go to the Apple thing, I've talked to a few people that have either worked for Apple or friends that work for Apple, and their whole goal with podcasting, like, I don't know if you guys know these numbers, but the average podcast only gets 114 listens.
Mm-hmm.
And the lifetime, I think the numbers, like if it's over 25,000 lifetime listens, you're in the top 5% of all podcasts that's ever existed.
Oh, wow.
So the numbers aren't as big as people think. So you might say, why is Apple so invested in podcasting? I mean, there's a million podcasts out there, but they're not making money on the front end on those podcasts. We get to broadcast for free. So the question is, why are they so hardcore into podcasting? And what the reason is, Felix just summed it up right there, is because if Elise wants to listen to my podcast, then she goes, okay, well, I should get an iPhone to start listening to all these podcasts. And so that might get you to get an iPhone. If you didn't, still, if you get an iPhone, you're listening to podcasts. Now they're getting you using their service. And to Felix's point, now they have your credit card. And then it's going to be easier for you to make that decision. So they know every new listener they get to podcasting, every person that gets brought into that ecosystem is a potential buyer for all their other stuff, whether it's like music, whether it's the movies, whatever that is. And so it's funny. It's because how McDonald's, they say, is not really a restaurant franchise.
The real estate.
Yeah, the real estate. Their property. They only allow, if you want to buy into McDonald's, you have to be willing to put the McDonald's in the best property areas, because they understand that's what they are. Well, I think the thing with Apple, when it comes to podcasting, they're not a podcasting host. They don't even host the podcast. You have to host them somewhere else. They're actually a company that realizes if we want to move all these digital assets, we need to have people that are excited and have their credit card out, and they're not thinking logically. So anyway, just a little side note.
Yeah, that's the barrier or the pain point that they like to remove, right? When they have people enter in their credit card, and then from there on, people are more likely, like how you mentioned, the podcast doesn't generate them revenue or substantial revenue, but it's almost like that tripwire offer, if you want to call it that kind of gets people in, or that freebie. Oh, I'd like enter in whatever it is, and then we'll give you exchange for this. So they understand. And it's almost like that's their, entire funnel itself, but it's really massive, because obviously Apple's, the largest company in the world, right? But they know that once you go into that world, it's almost like going to like Disneyland. So to get you through the gate, that's a true challenge. But the moment you're in there, just imagine all the opportunities and entertainment value it brings. So, it's the same idea of once you enter the Apple ecosystem, then you're looking at beyond just podcasts.
And it's hard to leave. Once you Apple, okay, so I have a phone. Well, now, okay, it'll work better if I have a Mac. So if I have a Mac, now I can do my phone calls on my Mac, and I can type on my text on my Mac. I don't have to do it on my phone. Well, I need to have both. And then I go home and say, where am I going to store my pictures? I got to run them on my TV. I should have an Apple TV.
Yeah.
It's brilliant.
Exactly.
All right, I'm going to keep you true to your time, Corey, because and this question is going to tie into how we can come to a beautiful finale. Thank you so much, Felix.
Absolutely.
So I know that you mentioned this before, but just I want to wrap my brain around it as well, and maybe some of our viewers do as well. So what would be one of my main pain points? Like, what is there a pain point that runs through, like a thread for your customer, your client, that would come to you, and how could we find you, and where do we start?
I think the biggest question is, how do companies today connect with the new pandemic and socially conscious consumer? Because due to everything that's happened, for example, companies now need to align themselves with the core values, or the reevaluated core values of their consumers. Right. So I think that's something that is going to be very, very powerful moving forward, especially since there's so much discord and unrest throughout pretty much the globe. People right now are looking for stability, and once again, the primal brain is in this hyper state of anxiety, fear, uncertainty. There's a lot of turbulence. It's almost chaotic. So, the way to think about a brand, for example, so a brand is this a verb, for example? Is this an emotional state? So when you think about a brand, you're going to feel something, or there's some sort of emotion that's going to come forward. That's either positive or negative or neutral, for example. So it would be important for brands to position themselves to, restore a lot of that balance back to people's lives that they're looking for certainty and stability at this point in time.
I love that. So what might be keeping them up at night is the lack of the certainty and stability.
Absolutely. Like right now, like how things are just changing so rapidly from, all angles. So I think having that sense of certainty, and this once again has survival values, as humans, if in our ancestral days, if we knew that we could always go back to this one place that has, a bottle of water where we know that we can stay hydrated, and let's say that, at that time they did a lot of hunting, that there'll be a lot of wildlife, then that certainty would almost guarantee, so to speak, your survival. So now if we were to look at the opposite of that, let's say that for whatever reason, all that wildlife had perished, or something, the waters got polluted, then that uncertainty now, ties in with the survival value of how this group of people or this tribe will continue to persist. So, a lot of that thinking still happens, even though technically, somebody would not perish. Let's say if they lost their job or whatever at this particular time, it's still that emotion of loss and the potential of, let's say, passing away due to not having access to those resources becomes very, very real. So, once the rational brain is able to has the ability to override that by identifying it, then that's when that's how somebody really starts to take charge of their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Love it. So, and I at least mentioned the other last important question is, how can people connect with you, learn more? Where would you normally direct or send them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm active on LinkedIn. I think that's the best place, like how we talked about, connect with people. That's part of the community, engage in conversations. I'm more than happy to, first of all, connect with any, people on there, also to have, meaningful dialogue, see what they're doing too, see, what I could do to help move their business forward. So once again, LinkedIn is number one place. Secondly is, at least as you mentioned, or I think it was Corey, it was I think both that, on Happy Buying Brain, there's also a blog as well. So, subscribe to my blog on Happy Buying Brain, and then that's a great way to keep updated on the latest and most recent news in the world of neuromarketing. And thirdly, we have a contact form, which will go directly to, will eventually get to me, and then that's one way that people could contact me directly as well. But I would highly recommend connecting on LinkedIn.
Awesome, and I just put those 2 links in the comment section here as well, Felix. So your website, and then also the LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile. So
perfect, thank you.
Awesome. So
well, Felix, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely, thank you so much. I love these types of conversations. I think we could always continually learning, and then building relationships. I know, at least in myself, this is our first time meeting. So once again, Corey, thank you for holding Blue Talk.
Beginning of who knows how it's going to unfold.
Exactly. So I think that's his journey of life. And is this a matter, does the person have the courage to continue persevering?
Absolutely. Are you waiting or are you creating?
Exactly. So there you go.
It's been a pleasure, and as you know, it's a to be continued. We'll continue this conversation on other platforms, and you're a part of the Blue Talks ecosystem now as well. So thank you for being you. Thank you so much for joining us. We will send you off to the rest of your day, but we totally appreciate everything you're doing in the world.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a pleasure meeting you, Elise, and thank you, Corey, for holding your event. I had an excellent time. Look forward for more meaningful conversations in the future as well.
Definitely.
Awesome,
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. We'll chat again.
Absolutely.
So, wow.
Right, guess what? You're within a few minutes of your 3:20, right?
Yeah, I have, you're right. I have a 3:20 Eastern. So I have 7 minutes. So just really quickly.
Corey.
What's that?
Why, maybe my clock's off. Go ahead.
What do you have?
I have 323 right now.
Yeah, so I have 3:30. I have a 3:30, so I have 7
Oh,
minutes.
I thought it was 3. Look at that. I was like, I even kept you. I thought it was 3:20 and we were late, but look, we're even early.
Well, I needed a buffer, a couple minute buffer. So
You tell me 3:20, didn't you?
I think I told you 3:15 on Facebook. I think I did that intentionally. But just to close this off, my quick, as always, close off is just if people want to learn more about Blue Talks. I don't say this often enough, but if you want to learn more about how you can become part of Blue Talks, maybe see yourself on this virtual event or on the stage or whatever that looks like, reach out to us. But bluetalks.com, just go there. Of course, everybody that's on here is seeing my Facebook link, so you can connect me on Facebook. I'm pretty accessible. And then I'll hand it over to Elise, and Elise, maybe if you want to say how they can reach you and connect with you, and that'll finish off our goodbye for the day.
Yes. So EliseRothman.com. I know it says flip your script with Elise. Oh, well, actually flip your script with Elise on Facebook. I mean, that's where you can find me, and my website's on there and that sort of thing. But just definitely reach out. I love something that Felix just said, restore balance and certainty. So if you're ready to restore balance and certainty in your own life so you can go out into the world with a sense of certainty, feel free to reach out and let's have a conversation about how you can maybe flip that internal script that's keeping you in a state of waiting as opposed to creating.
Love it. And so tomorrow, just to give people a heads up, we'll be back. Tomorrow's a slightly shorter day, but actually closer to the norm. So we have 3 guests tomorrow. Runs from 12 p.m. to 2:15 p.m. Eastern. We have Dr. Sveta Silverman. We talked about cellular health today, and that's what she does. She actually examines cellular cells, cancer cells, and she talks about how we can improve our lives and bring ourselves back to cellular balance, which is going to be really exciting. We have Dr. Candace Stanek, and we have Leanne Francis Bates. So we have 3 super powerful guests tomorrow.
Felix was our only male guest this whole week.
Yes, I'll have to. We have a lot of Blue Talks males, but when I say a lot, it's relative because it's about 20% of the whole makeup. But we'll make sure we have more than one next time.
It's okay. But look at you, surrounded by all these amazing women.
Yeah, and I'm aiming to bring some of the male power or whatever you want to call it, essence to it, the whole event. But I guess there's always a constant male here. They have that male essence. But yeah, so as far as that goes, join us tomorrow. It's the final day of this round. You're going to see 3 amazing presenters again. I think you've seen from the conversations we have that these people are bringing their A game. These are world-class people. And so I hope you're learning and taking a lot from it like I am. I know at least
I got notes and notes. I'm constantly taking notes.
Yeah, I'm the same thing. So if we're learning and we're on here as well, I'm sure people listening in are also. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Elise, my partner in crime. And we will be back different bat time, different bat channel tomorrow. Same channel, but we start now. What time did we start today? Today we started at
12 o'clock.
Oh yeah, I guess we're starting at the same time. It's just we finish earlier.
Yes.
Okay, so I can restate that and say same bat time, same bat channel.
Yes. See you tomorrow. I intend to see you tomorrow.
I missed that. What did you say?
I said I intend to see you tomorrow.
Yes, I intend to see you both, or you all tomorrow as well. Elise and the guests and everybody that's tuning in. Thank you for being you, everybody. We will see you here tomorrow.